Imagine you work tirelessly, dedicating your time and energy to a project that means everything to you. Each day, you pour your heart into your tasks, striving for excellence and pushing through challenges. You collaborate with a team, sharing ideas and supporting one another, all while keeping your eyes on the goal. As the deadline approaches, the pressure mounts, but so does your determination. You know that the effort you put in now will pay off in the end, leading to a sense of accomplishment and pride in what you created together. A pack mule for more than 20 years. When you finally retire and are ready to enjoy life, you wake up the next day, finding yourself 20 years in the past, understanding everything that is about to unfold. In a world filled with monsters and awakened beings, you're determined to become the richest and most successful version of yourself. The most powerful person in under 3 years. Our story begins at a retirement celebration. He noted that his farewell was quite modest, featuring only a few friends, some drinks, and gifts. Despite the challenges, he successfully preserved 20 years of work and now owns several buildings in his name. Now, all that remained was to enjoy a comfortable life and explore the world. When he opened his eyes, he realized that it wouldn't be so simple. He sat up in bed and realized he was in a different room. He sighed, realizing that this was the dormitory where he had lived 2 decades earlier. As he glanced at his phone, he noticed that it was the year 2018. Furious, he hurled his phone against the wall, wondering if someone was playing a cruel joke on him. Angry, Diane began shouting, expressing that they could have sent him back at another time, but chose to return him now. Feeling dissatisfied, he questioned why they were taking this course of action. Rubbing his head, he wondered what he had done wrong. Convincing himself that he had to endure the situation, he glanced at the watch on his wrist. He realized it was the watch that Zhang Qiu had given him. He recalled his friend telling him that this watch was one of the last relics of the legendary Toshido. Glancing at the watch, he began to wonder if it was the reason for his return, and suspected that he might have tampered with it while drunk. Suddenly, someone pounded on the door angrily, demanding to know the source of the noise and insisting that he come out. He remembered that the landlord's son lived next door and acted like a delinquent. Every night, loud sounds played non-stop. In the morning, he was always charged a fee for the noise, which he paid without even knowing if he was awake. As the man outside asked if he should break down the door, Don found it incredibly irritating. He opened the door as the thug asked what he was doing. As he looked at Diane, the guy asked why he was smiling. The chubby man continued to complain to Dayan, who couldn't help but notice his high-quality clothes and leather jacket. The man began to say that he had thought about reporting him but didn't want to jeopardize a young man's future, so he would accept compensation instead. He extended his hand, assuring that everything would be fine if he simply handed over his watch. At that moment, Dayan, feeling extremely irritated, he looked at the thug's hand and, leaving him confused, slapped it away. He prepared to launch an attack on the thug. Before the criminal could comprehend what was happening, in that moment, Dayan delivered a swift punch to his face. Blood trickled from his nose as he began to fall backward. In a swift motion, Dayan caught the man's face just before he hit the ground. He delivered a powerful knee strike to his face. The returner asked the chubby guy why all these lowlifes kept approaching the newcomers to society. Stepping away from the thug, he remarked that this was nothing compared to the suffering the guy had caused him. Even so, it would suffice for now, as he grabbed the chubby guy's clothes. Still on the ground, the man asked if he knew how valuable they were, while Diane declared that he would also take his room from now on. He expressed confusion about why he had returned to 2018, but he recalled waking up after falling at a construction site while on the job. As a blue aura enveloped his body, he stated that he would attempt to awaken in a different place. Blue mana coursed through his veins, as Dayan remarked that he had been manipulating mana for over 20 years. He acknowledged that his self-awakening would pose no problem. Although he noted his body lacked muscle mass and nutrients, he was surprisingly managing well. Spoiling the badass atmosphere, his stomach rumbled, revealing he was hungry. Dayan started searching for a restaurant near the construction site. However, it appeared that the restaurant was undergoing renovations. He concluded that this was likely due to their inability to easily identify the portals, which had resulted in significant damage. Suddenly, a desperate scream caught his attention. People were running in panic as a portal suddenly opened, catching him off guard. There was a red wild dog, a fierce creature with sharp fangs that typically roamed in packs. An older man grasped the young man's shoulder, urging him to run as fast as he could. Suddenly, they heard a man calling desperately for his son, while the child pleaded for help. Dan wondered if this was the reason he had returned. He scanned the area, searching for a weapon he could use. He spotted a crowbar and thought it would do the trick. Gripping his tool tightly, he sprinted toward the source of the screams. Suddenly, he heard an incredibly loud scream right beside him. A little girl was surrounded by wild dogs, crying out for her father. One of the dogs lunged at her, attempting to attack, but in the blink of an eye, Diane managed to pull the girl by her arm. Facing the dogs, he instructed the girl to run to her father. The monster charged at him, filled with rage. In an instant, he vanished from their sight. Swinging his crowbar, he launched an attack on one of the dogs. He quickly struck its head. The dog surprisingly recovered quickly and attempted to attack Diane once more. However, he skillfully struck it from below. Landing a blow under its jaw, the monster experienced a powerful impact. He wasn't finished yet and gripped his makeshift weapon tightly. He spun his body, attempting to fling the monster away. Summoning his strength, he started shouting, pushing himself even further. After all that effort, Diane finally succeeded in throwing the dog away, leaving the other monsters in shock. Once again, the moment was interrupted by the sound of his stomach growling. He realized he was hungry and wondered why the dogs were gathering in this way. Surprising some of the monsters, a remark comes to mind. These guys look pretty juicy and plump, making them seem like a nice meal. As Diane drooled with hunger, the monster began to feel scared. He mentioned that in the past, he had always enjoyed the taste of their meat when he cooked it. Feeling a bit irritated, the returner remarked that he needed to finish this quickly because he was starving. Diane remarked that despite being young and healthy, his current body didn't compare to the one he had at 40. As one of the dogs lunged at him from above, he noted that, in contrast, his knees were still very strong. In an instant, Diane was atop the dog, poised to strike. Unexpectedly, he chose not to use his weapon. Instead, he delivered a powerful kick to the top of the dog's head. As Diane landed on the ground, he spotted another monster charging toward him. The monster lunged to bite him, but the returner skillfully dodged, realizing that a mere weapon wouldn't suffice. With quick thinking, he used his watch as a pair of brass knuckles. He landed a powerful punch to the monster's head. Gazing at the still intact watch, Diane marveled at its resilience. As he surveyed the area, he noticed that about 10 monsters were still remaining. Today, in surprise, the police arrived and instructed citizens to follow their directions. Noticing his new shirt, the returner saw that it was completely torn. Still unhappy that it had ripped on its first use, one of the officers approached and called him a superhuman. The man expressed his gratitude for protecting the citizens and inquired about his name and affiliation to arrange for his rewards. As he introduced himself to the officer as Lim Dian, he added that he had no affiliation, which surprised the officer. Somewhat awkwardly, he mentioned that he hadn't registered as a superhuman yet and that it had only been a few hours since his awakening. Dayan shared his account information, noting that he likely wouldn't receive the rewards immediately. He then bid farewell to the officer, explaining that he was in a hurry. The officer called out to him, saying he had something to share, but Dayan continued to run. As he left, Dayan mentally affirmed that his name and contact information should be sufficient for them to reach him. As soon as the guilds learned of his existence, they all began searching for him frantically. He sat at a restaurant where they served him a creamy soup with meat. Finally, Diane began to eat. After the first spoonful, he murmured that it was delicious. Suddenly, his phone vibrated, catching his attention with an incoming call. He realized it was faster than expected, explaining that this was due to everyone focusing on recruiting superhumans. Looking at his phone, he realized that it had already been 2 years since the first gate opened. Instead of military soldiers, superhumans began to operate, granting guilds significant influence. The emergence of a new awakened being led to fierce competition for recruitment, leaving Diane to ponder just how exhausting this situation would become. He also recalled that there were numerous superhuman criminals in addition to the 6 impending disasters. With that, he decided to use all his knowledge and information about the future to retire in 3 years. Dan stares at his phone, feeling both surprised and happy as he realizes the messages keep coming. To his shock, someone approaches and asks if his name is Lim Dian. He responds affirmatively, inquiring who is asking. The man introduces himself as Kim Gil-soo, the manager of the Royal Guild. Gil-soo expresses his admiration for Diane's monster hunting skills and states that he would like to sign a contract with him. Suddenly, someone interrupts the conversation. A woman arrives at the restaurant and asks if he is Diane. She asks if he's the man from the monster subjugation video, noting that he's even more impressive in person. Once again, they are interrupted by someone else claiming to be from the Warrior Guild. As expected, several guild managers arrive and begin making their offers. Dan grows increasingly annoyed as his phone continues to ring incessantly. Vibrating with energy, he was surrounded by people eager to win him over. To their surprise, Diane tells everyone to be quiet. He looks at them coldly. He states that if anyone speaks again, he won't join any guild. Turning to the representatives, he asks if they should move to another location. In a larger room, Diane sits across from the woman, while the other managers wait for their turn. Sipping his tea, he assures that he won't prolong the situation. Don inquires about the highest offer they are willing to make for his entry. The Royal Guild manager responds that the contract prohibits him from revealing the amount, so he will need to discuss it with each person individually. Taking a bite of cake, Diane asks if anyone else wants a piece. Gilzu confirms that he is the Royal Guild manager. The man begins to explain his guild, but Dayan interrupts once more, bidding him farewell. Gilzu is utterly confused by what he hears. Meanwhile, Diane remembers that the guild will soon merge with another. Dad asks the others what they were willing to pay him. The man in the back, shocking Gilzu, offers 1 billion for his entry. With that, the other representatives begin raising their offers, even reaching 100, 200. As everyone makes high offers, Diane wonders what Blackhound could possibly bring to the table. Suddenly, someone offers 2 billion and promises the opportunity of a lifetime. The best base salary, along with incentives and commissions, is being discussed. Sitting across from him is Baek Young-hee, the manager of the White House Guild. He remembers that this is a newly formed guild, but it will rise to become one of Korea's top 3 guilds in just 10 years. Perhaps that explains their aggressive recruitment efforts. Dayan tells her to stay while asking the others to leave, but not before requesting that they leave their business cards behind. Once everyone is left, they sit in silence, not uttering a word. She mentions that she has seen his videos of fighting monsters and notes that he fights skillfully for someone who has just awakened. Diane notices that she kindly mentions she has done some research on his background. She gently sets an envelope down on the table. Young-hee believes that he is either a genius or that he acquired those skills before his awakening. She expresses her desire to guide him as the future of the White House. Diane realizes that the terms of the contract exceed anything he could have ever imagined in his past life. He asks Young-hee if he can add a few more items, and she simply agrees. She feels confused as she watches him write in silence. She begins to laugh, saying that Diane is very funny, but he insists he's not joking. His demands include a 4-day work week, guaranteed end times, and the right to refuse long-term missions. Extremely irritated, Young-hee demands to know if this is some kind of elaborate joke. He replies coldly that these are his terms. The manager looks at him and asks what gives him such confidence. Diane confidently asserts that if they finalize the deal, she won't be disappointed. Suddenly, she stands up and slams her hands on the table. Young-hee replies that she will return with a revised contract in a few days. Attempting to charm him, she suggests they have a drink instead. He remains indifferent as he watches Young-hee leave. Dayan then reflects that he shouldn't get involved with her after all, as she is the daughter of the guildmaster. He stands up, having decided to register as a superhuman. He arrives at the Seoul Disaster Management Branch. In the Superhuman Cooperation Team Room, a member informs the group. He was informed that the manager isn't available, and as a newcomer, he cannot proceed just yet. He informs the receptionist that he's in a hurry and inquires if there's an alternative route. She says she will try calling the manager first. Dayan mentally notes that the person on the phone is likely the most important one present, so he needs to act quickly. As she leads him, the receptionist inquires whether he has any specific abilities. Dayan tells her that he only possesses physical enhancements, claiming there's nothing special about him, though it's clear this is a lie. Since there are no magical measuring devices available yet, you can only learn about abilities by demonstrating them. She leads him to a room, explaining that they need to proceed with the superhuman test. She then asks him to lift the dot and places his hand on the bar as mana courses through his veins. With one hand, he effortlessly lifts the weight. The astonished woman asks if he's really a superhuman. Dayan responds by asking if he looks like a fake. She hands him a temporary superhuman certificate, and he expresses his gratitude. The woman informs him that they will contact him when the official certificate is ready, and Dayan simply thanks her. Someone arrives and asks if Yu Jin is still there. The receptionist stands up and calls for the team leader. The Den feels mentally uneasy and decides it's best for him to leave quietly. As he walks past the man, the newly awakened one recognizes him as Ju Sang-wook, the head of the cooperation team. As he departs, Dean mentions that he likely won't be coming back. The leader asks the receptionist if that is the new superhuman. She replies that he is Dayan, the one they discussed over the phone. He realizes that this is the standout rookie. Daden was in the contamination control zone, an area that had been abandoned because of the presence of monsters. This is where Gaia, a world of magic and swords, will intersect with Earth. This will be the only control zone established in Korea. Extremely pleased, Daden declares that after his first payment, he plans to buy this territory. Owning the gate will bring him a fortune. Crouching down and rummaging through his bag, he declares that he needs to unload all his baggage before heading out to hunt some monsters. To his surprise, he hears a voice warning that if they want to survive, they should leave. The voice warns once more that if they come any closer, they will die. Daden wonders if this is the language of Gaia. As Daden looks in the direction of the sound, he begins to walk toward it, his body becoming transparent. His ability is concealment, which allows him to blend in and hide within his surroundings. This is why, in his past life, he was compelled to undertake countless reconnaissance, espionage, and assassination missions. As he moves swiftly, he declares that he has no intention of enduring such hardships again. Still running, Daden wonders if that voice is being pursued by something. A little girl stands surrounded by 3 men, warning them once again. Furious, the girl conjures a massive wall of fire in her hands. Those around her express mixed feelings about the implications of her abilities and what they mean for the future. Frightened by her, the child's fear causes her magic to fade. One of them suggests they could sell her for a great price. Daden recalls that in Gaia, abilities are referred to as superpowers, and wonders if this girl is a dimensional refugee. One of the men approaches her and asks her to stop resisting, promising that they'll buy her something delicious. Daden is taken aback when he sees his tattoo. It bears the symbol of the criminal faction known as Red Snake. He wonders if they are also involved in human trafficking. Daden notes that he's low on mana and decides to end his concealment, contemplating whether he should assist the girl. He holds his opponent firmly. In a surprising turn of events, he stabs one of the criminals in the heart. Daden tosses his dagger into the air and catches it effortlessly. He does it again, repositioning himself. Without them even realizing what's happening, Daden swiftly slashes the throats of both. The little girl, observing everything, begins to tremble, horrified by the unfolding scene. With her still trembling, Daden clears his throat awkwardly to get her attention. He asks if she's from Gaia and mentions that he has a few questions for her. The girl, taken aback, asks if he understands her language. Suddenly, as always, a stomach growls, but this time, it's the girl's. After some hesitation, he asks the little girl if she likes meat. After eating, the little girl happily thanks him for saving her and promises to repay the favor. Grumbling, he asks her how much she can eat on her own. Confused, she responds by asking what he means. He shifts the conversation, asking if she was the only one who successfully crossed the dimensional portal. The child hesitates, and Daden further explains, asking where she was before crossing the portal and where her home is. With her head down, the little girl says she can't tell him. He then asks her age, but she replies that she can't share that information either. Daden wonders why she feels unable to share anything with him. His thoughts are interrupted when the little girl asks for his help. She admits she knows nothing about this place, but despite him being a stranger, she feels he can assist her. The girl reveals that she can control fire, demonstrating her ability by forming small flames in her hand. Feeling a bit disappointed, she admits that she can't handle it very well regardless. He coldly tells her that he has no time to raise a child and feels no obligation to take care of her, leaving her feeling sad. He adds that, in any case, there is only 1 month remaining. She can stay with him during that time. Daden tells her that he will teach her his language and some basic common sense. In return, he will expect her to assist with some chores. Smiling, the girl asks if she can truly stay, while he internally acknowledges that he's beginning to feel irritated. Suddenly, he hands her a stack of dishes and asks her to wash them. The little girl, filled with excitement, introduces herself as Lily and expresses her determination to work hard in the future. She asks where she should wash them, and he points her in that direction. Daden notes to himself that her name seems familiar. Surprised, he recalls the fire user named Lily, remembering that in 10 years, a red-haired woman will burn half of Seoul the Fire Witch, one of the 6 calamities. He convinces himself that Lily merely resembles her and is certainly not the witch. Watching the cheerful child, Daden comments on how joyful and carefree they seem. She was raised to become a disaster, and perhaps he has prevented a calamity. As they stroll through the market, the little girl asks where they are headed. He tells her they are going to the market to prepare a special meal today, which fills her with excitement. Daden asks the butcher if he has any raptor loin, while Lily gazes at the large selection of meats displayed before her. He explains that they began selling monster meat in response to food shortages. Daden explains that this meat will transform into a mana-rich nutritional ingredient, one that people will find indispensable in the future. They leave with plenty of meat, thanks to the butcher, who generously provided extra to feed the little girl with a rumbling stomach. As they pass by a store, Dayan mentions that they need to buy clothes for the girl and encourages Lily to choose something, which makes her even happier. She selects a dress, expressing her desire to wear it. Diane simply watches her choice in silence. After a moment of disbelief, she is now dressed in athletic clothes. Diane expresses that wearing something like that in the ruins would be uncomfortable, while Lily remains shocked. He then points to a bubbling pot and announces that today's special dish is something extraordinary, designed to boost their mana. Feeling a mix of nervousness and disgust, Lily asks if they are truly going to eat that. Dayan says it's good for their bodies, so they need to eat. However, she changes her mind when she catches a whiff of something incredibly appetizing. Holding a tray of chicken, Dayan explains that it was meant to be dessert, but they can eat it now. She picks up a drumstick and tastes chicken for the first time. The little girl is thrilled to discover that it's delicious. She claims it's incredibly tasty and wants to eat only that from now on. Extremely annoyed, he asks Lily if she shouldn't mix everything together since she will be eating both. The little girl pleads that it isn't necessary. Diane concedes that he is also particular about food. In any case, the soup isn't so bad that he can't eat it. Irritated, he mentally confesses that if he hadn't regressed, he would be dining at a high-end restaurant right now. Lily complains that her tongue feels numb, but Dayan scolds her to stop whining after she has eaten everything. He stands up and says he'll be busy, instructing the little girl to wash the dishes and not to disturb him. Dayan takes a seat and starts to meditate. He explains that he is practicing the Great Heart of the Sea technique, which enhances resilience and allows for more flexible mana usage. He remembers that in his previous life, he would train each time he returned to Earth. Dayan admits that he practiced this technique consistently. However, his progress has never been as good as it is now. With a smile, he observes that if he keeps eating mana-rich foods and practicing, he could become stronger than ever before. Unexpectedly for Lily, who was watching him, Dayan opens his eyes and says that his stomach is already rumbling. With excitement, the little girl asks if he's hungry and if he would like some chicken. Feeling a bit embarrassed, he realizes she has been watching him the entire time. Finally, they begin eating the mana-enriched food while she screams that she hates it. He silently agrees. After 2 days, his mana has noticeably increased. He realizes that at this rate, he will soon be able to hunt for treasures. Yumi calls Dai in. He inquired whether he planned to contact her and express concern about her well-being. He realizes he completely forgot about the guild and asks her if the contract was properly revised. She hesitates before answering, leading Diane to assume there's a problem. Yumi says she successfully convinced the CEO, but he has requested a trial test. She promises to find another way if he can wait a little longer, but Dayan agrees to the test with specific conditions. At the White House Guild headquarters, someone comments on how cute the little girl is. Dayan introduces Lily to Yumi, explaining that she is his younger half-sister. He shares that Lily grew up abroad and doesn't speak Korean well, so she will be staying with him for now. The child asks who Yumi is, calling her pretty, but Dayan simply replies that she's someone who gives them money. Lily interprets that money signifies chicken and praises Yumi for being a good person. Yumi explains that her guild does not interfere in the private lives of superhumans. A man welcomes him to the White House Guild, introducing himself as Bok Chang-soo, the representative. As they shake hands, he apologizes for any inconvenience, stating that this is an important procedure. Dayan responds that it's no problem. The man tells him that if he passes the test, his initial payment will be doubled and asks if Dayan agrees. Unleashing his golden mana, he intensely questions whether Dayan is truly worth it. The Awakened One mentally concedes that only the true monster could exert such intense pressure using only his mana. He declares that he is not the same as he once was. He summoned his blue mana, surprising even Lily. With a smile, he conjures a mana shield around himself, declaring that he will prove his worth. The man is very surprised to see this. Turning to the manager, he requests that the contract be rewritten. She responds that the contract they agreed upon has already been revised. However, he insists that they should triple the initial amount. If he passes all the tests, they will add another 20 billion won. Dayan notes that if he succeeds in all the tests, his initial payment will total 26 billion won. In the guild's training center, the man informs him that the test will consist of a one-on-one combat against 3 guild members. Since this is just a test, he should be careful not to get injured. The man introduces the first challenger, Hwang Jong-hook, who is a member of the guild's first division. The manager asks him what weapon he would like, but Dayan calmly replies that a watch is sufficient, leaving his opponent visibly irritated. He observes that it hasn't been long since Dayan awakened, yet he is already displaying such arrogance. Shang-Su gives the signal to start, and Dayan responds by saying he'll let him go first. Holding his sword, Jang-hook declares that he will help him find God. Dayan, confused, wonders what is wrong with this guy. He remembers hearing about Jang's ability to accelerate. This allows him to gradually increase his speed as long as he keeps moving. As a result, he must secure a victory before his opponent gains too much speed. Jang quickly starts running around. Dayan appeared as if he were conjuring a tornado. Dayan admits he anticipated the attack right away, even though it was unexpected. Some spectators watching from above remark on their colleague's incredible speed, claiming it would be impossible to surpass him. The guild manager feels somewhat nervous. While the representative stays calm, his opponent bursts into laughter, declaring that he will finish it right now. He suddenly appears behind Dayan, poised to strike. However, Dayan unexpectedly senses his presence and quickly turns around. With a swift punch, he connects with the watch on his wrist. He remarks that those who let down their guard are easier to handle. As he watches his opponent fall to the ground, he mentally acknowledges that he was prepared to take damage if he couldn't land a hit. Lily cheers, exclaiming that he won, while the manager looks on in surprise. With a proud smile, Dayan asks who's next. The guild representative approaches him, praising the performance as amazing. However, Dayan expresses concern, asking if his opponent is all right. The man informs him that his opponent doesn't seem to be in any life-threatening danger and should recover after a few days of rest. With a smile, he attributes it all to Dayan. Dayan asks if he's serious, all the while mentally confessing that if he hadn't controlled his strength, his opponent's head would have exploded. Looking up, he notices a few people watching him and realizes that he has already fulfilled the requirements to join the guild. With a grin, he decides to enjoy the rest of the test, leaving everyone surprised by his reaction. The little girl, feeling somewhat scared, asks why he suddenly looks like a pervert, which annoys Dad. In another training area, Yoon-ye explains that the White House's first division is made up of 6 teams, each consisting of 5 members. With that, she announces that his next task is to complete the project by the end of the week. The opponent will lead the 6th team in the first division. Dayan recalls that this was one of the guild officials who had quietly observed his last battle. Ignoring his attempt at a greeting, Dayan raises his guard and declares that he is ready. A bit awkwardly, the official declares that he is ready as he draws his sword. The bell signals the start of the battle. Dayan dashes toward his opponent, preparing to strike. As he prepares to strike, Dayan positions himself to deliver a punch while holding a watch in his hand. With relative ease, Yang successfully blocks his attack with a shield. Attempting to counter, the official swings his sword, but Dayan skillfully dodges the blow. Convinced this is his opportunity, the team leader grips his shield firmly and attempts to strike. Unexpectedly, Dayan dodges while making a hand gesture. Using 3 fingers, he deftly maneuvered the delicate instrument, showcasing his precision and skill as he executed strikes with a technique known as the eagle claw fist. Defending against his attack, the official inquired whether he had learned martial arts before his awakening. Attempting to launch a counterattack, the man swung his sword with force, but Dayan ducked once more, skillfully dodging the strike. He halted mid-motion, catching his opponent off guard. Throwing his body backward, he delivers a powerful strike, known as the slanted Iron Mountain. Yang is even more surprised when he looks back. The force of the attack was so intense that the man was sent flying. As Dayan glances at his opponent, a wave of nervousness washes over him. The official, visibly furious, admits that he is indeed very strong, as a frightening aura emanates from his body. Looking at Yang, Dayan reveals that he tried to conceal his strength until the final test. However, it seems he will need to complete everything as quickly as possible. Remembering the guild representative, Dayan wonders if that intimidating old man expects him to reveal everything he's learned. Touching his shield, the official expresses his desire to have him on his team, believing they would make great partners. Dayan, feeling a bit annoyed, asks who makes that decision. The official turns to the manager and asks if the winner couldn't make that decision. The old man nods in agreement. Dayan calls out to the manager, stating that if he wins, he wants to be the team leader. The officials watching the battle begin to discuss whether the situation is unrealistic or too high a risk. He expresses his desire to become a team leader and plans to recruit the members himself. They will also undertake missions independently. Mentally, he assumes he wants to approach these tasks gradually. By defeating a team leader, he will no longer need to. The representative, wearing a serious expression, nods in agreement. Looking at Diane, the old man states that if he loses, he will receive his entry fee back along with double the contract period. Diane accepts without hesitation, leaving the official confused and questioning whether he truly believes he can win. With an intense gaze, Yang declares that Yang Mi likes him and only pushed him away because she is actually interested in him. Diane recalls that he will create a significant uproar in the future, leading to his expulsion from the guild. He asks the official to go clean his room. Yang, irritated, begins to assert that he's not a pervert, telling him to shut up. The official activates his barbarian mode, granting him a physical boost as he declares that he will teach Diane the true strength of a leader. The man lunges at Diane. Gripping the watch tightly, he employs the deep-sea technique. He employs the punishment fist, instructing his opponent to block. Diane lands a direct hit to his opponent's stomach. The impact caused several trees to fall behind him. The representative and the manager stare at the scene in shock. While Yang stands with his broken shield on the ground, everyone wonders if the newcomer truly managed to win. Sitting on the ground, Diane reflects on how making money can be both tiring and stressful. With his arm trembling, he concludes that his body is betraying him. He remained very weak, having drained all his strength in a single strike. He sits down to meditate in the center of the training field, focusing his mind in preparation for the upcoming battle. Diane soon opens his eyes, sensing that someone is approaching. It was the manager congratulating him and declaring him the leader of the Sevens team. With a smile, he tells her that it's good to hear. Standing up, Diane concludes that he already has 10 billion guaranteed under the contract. However, it may be beneficial to raise the 20 billion. He looks at the manager and asks who his next opponent is, while the little girl wonders if he's really going to fight again. The guild representative states that it will be him, and he honestly expected the team leader to emerge victorious. The manager excitedly announces that for the next test, he has no choice but to conduct it himself. Both Diane and the manager look at Changsu in confusion, with Diane mentally concluding that he won't stand a chance against this monster. Diane coldly declares that he will forfeit the third test, leaving the representative feeling extremely indignant and disappointed. Changsu tries to persuade him, stating that if he can hold him off for 3 minutes, he will receive 30 billion. However, Diane insists that he cannot do it. Worried about the guild's financial situation, the manager insists they need to finalize the contract, leaving the representative feeling somewhat embarrassed. The contract specifies that a bonus of 10 billion for victories has been allocated to Lim Diane, the leader of the 7th team. The manager asks Diane if he understands that these are particularly good conditions, to which Diane replies that he's excited to work. Yang asks him where his team is, and Diane replies that he plans to recruit each member himself. However, he expresses a desire to make one now. The manager responds that this is possible, but inquires about who it would be. He mentions that she is a talented individual, not affiliated with any guild. He then calls out the little girl's name, leaving her feeling confused. She looks at him, questioning if he's truly calling her, and Diane. She instructs the child to create the largest fireball possible. She lets out a deep sigh and admits that she's still hungry. He says they will give her 3 whole chickens. Lily runs to the center of the room, declaring that it's a promise. The little girl begins to summon a large fireball above her head, excitedly shouting that she's going to get 3 chickens. Surprised, the manager asks if his half-sister is also superhuman. He confirms this and expresses his intention to have her on his team. Diane claims she can manipulate fire without causing any harm to her surroundings. She learned it in just a few days. He begins discussing Lily's entry bonus and suggests they start with 3 billion. The little girl, wearing a frightening expression, asks where her chickens are. He hands her the chickens, and it's announced that the signing bonus for Team 7's Lily has been confirmed. He informs him that the entire building is owned by the guild, offering training centers, private accommodations, and command centers. The manager walks down the hallway with Diane and asks if he finds the facilities impressive. As Diane steps into the armory, he can't help but admit that it is, in fact, quite impressive. She mentions that if he wants a specific weapon, they can create it within a week. He responds that he will take some temporary items instead. Diane concludes that this will be sufficient for the time being, and that for now, he will only use these 2 daggers, and asks if they have seen everything necessary. She mentions that since it's his first day, they can conclude the tour for now. Suddenly, Changsu begins calling Diane, informing him that there's a message from the command center. He mentions that all teams are currently out in the field and, despite it being his first day, they would like to request his assistance. Feeling a bit disheartened, he mentally acknowledges that he had expected to go home early on his first day. The man mentions that if it weren't for the urgency of the situation, they could even play a game. However, Diane, feeling nervous, asks where he should go. Upon arriving at the location, Diane inquires about the situation and learns that a horde of giant snail monsters is emerging from a portal. Around them, several awakened fighters attempt to battle the monsters, but they find themselves ensnared in the slime spewed by the creatures. Diane describes the situation as a complete mess, yet he notes that, despite this chaos, most of the monsters appear to be under control. He receives orders to capture 3 of them for examination, and he agrees, while Lily complains about the smell. He explains that the monsters are extremely weak, but when struck hard, they emit a terrible odor. Overwhelmed by the stench, the little girl asks if she really has to fight these creatures. Dayton explains that he has blocked his sense of smell using mana. She asks him to teach her the technique, and he explains that it may not work right away, but with consistent effort she will improve. To his surprise, she says it worked, and that she no longer smells anything, which makes him feel proud of her talent. As he looks around, he realizes that no one has been able to capture a sample since the monsters began to explode. As he charges toward the monsters, he declares that he needs to try capturing one right away. While running, he spots a small snail making its way up a tree. Dayton approaches the tree and kicks it, causing the monster to fall. The creature tumbles toward him, attempting to launch an attack. He positions himself, and the palms of his hands start to glow blue. He employs the Tyvek technique, propelling the monster backward. Dizzy from the whirlpool effect, the monster collapses to the ground. It was difficult to comprehend what had occurred. With the creature completely defenseless, Dayton approaches. As she watches him, Lily begins to beg him to teach her this technique as well. Coolly tells her that if she wants it, she'll have to pay 100 billion. Shocked, she asks how many chickens that amounts to. He informs the command center that they have collected the samples and will hand them over to the collection team before departing. She asks if he's feeling nervous or if there's anything he needs to discuss since it's his first mission. He calmly replies that he isn't. Suddenly, someone asks if he is part of the White House. The man approaches with his companions, stating that he has never seen him before. Dayton hides Lily behind him and mentions that he heard the White House has recruited a new awakened one. They promoted him to team leader. This man is the leader of Team 5 of Black Hound, and he inquires whether the technique Dayton used earlier is one of his specialties. Dayton remembers that this was Jang Hyun, his boss from his previous life. He asks Hyun if there is a problem. He explains that the snails are exploding all over the place. This made it impossible for them to collect a sufficient sample. Dayton asks for clarification on what he means by that. The man, growing increasingly irritated, asks Dayton how old he is to not understand his words. Members from various guilds approach, proposing that they share information to advance together. The White House manager advises Dayton to refuse and to file a formal complaint with the guild later. Observing everyone, he states that he has seen this happen many times before and warns that if he doesn't let it go, they will turn their aggression toward everyone in his guild. He throws the bag containing the monsters and tells them to take it, all while the manager yells his name. He admits that he knew this would happen from the very beginning. He starts to walk around the bag. He states that they can have it if they manage to get past him. The members of the rival guilds glare at him, clearly irritated by his actions. His former boss takes the lead, suggesting that this appears to be what he wants. Dayton whispers to Lily that as soon as he gives the signal, she should set the area on fire to create confusion. The girl, with a chilling gaze, asks if he truly wants to burn everyone. He decides against it. After all, killing them could complicate matters. She should just set fire to the area. Hyun tells Dayton to get up, referring to it as a re-education from a senior. To everyone's surprise, the portal unexpectedly begins to grow larger, emitting red lightning. Suddenly, a giant snail begins to emerge. They focus on the monster, noting its immense size and realizing they must prepare for battle. Everyone rushes toward the monster, leaving Dayton behind. The snail is exceptionally large and features multiple tentacles. One of the awakened warns Dayton not to get involved, explaining that they might accidentally harm him and won't take responsibility for it. He says he understands as he grabs the bag containing the monsters. Dayton tells the little girl to take it to the car and come back, and she simply nods in response. As they strike at the creature's tentacles, which retaliate fiercely, they wonder why it doesn't retreat and what kind of power it possesses. One of the awakened fighters is captured by the snail, while his comrade shouts for them to sever the tentacles. The White House manager informs the team leader that he must return and fight. She adds that he needs to land at least one blow to claim the loot, smiling as she speaks. He reassures her not to worry. Looking back, he acknowledges that with their current power, they are unable to handle the monster. Someone shouts for the tanks to prioritize dealing with the tentacles surrounding him first. but someone else yells that their shields are melting. Dayton's former boss instructs the tanks to fall back and prepare for a long-range attack. They begin to run as he shouts that this creature is completely different from the smaller ones. Dayton and the little girl watch quietly, with him stating that they will only intervene once everyone else has fallen. A man runs with his arms stiff and unmoving while someone nearby yells at him, urging him to hurry. The man, a member of Black Hound, apologizes to everyone as he sprints away. Some awakened ones notice their weapons melting as the monster continues to grow larger by the moment. A voice cries out for everyone to flee from the monster as it assaults the awakened ones. Meanwhile, the man with the petrified arm pleads for someone to take him with them. Once again, he is yelled at and told to escape on his own. A tentacle from the snail reaches out and grabs him, pulling him closer to its mouth as he screams for help. Suddenly, someone cuts the tentacle, telling him that people like them are not comrades. It was Diane who saved him, and he expressed his gratitude. Observing the man on the ground, Diane comments that he is not using his attributes as he should. Diane tells him that if he wants to learn the proper way to use them, he should seek him out later. He then tells Lily that they should get started, and this excites her. Suddenly, a massive fire ignites, leaving everyone nearby shocked and uncertain about its cause. The guild manager warns him not to be reckless, stating that the support team will arrive in 5 minutes. He believes it would be better for their guild to monopolize the fight, especially since another guild could arrive in just 5 minutes. A report comes in stating that entering the area is impossible due to the fire, prompting an order for all drones to return. Yami shouts at him, insisting that it's too dangerous and that monopolizing it isn't worth the risk. Diane reassures her that she doesn't need to worry, but Yami insists that if he returns injured, there will be consequences. He explains that this monster is an anomaly and has a separate entry in the encyclopedia. To be ready for unexpected situations, he memorizes every strategy. Diane mentions that the monster is vulnerable to heat, and its weaknesses can be exploited to gain the upper hand in their battle. Movements will slow as the area ignites. He leaps forward to confront the monster, urging Lily to stay safe. He explains that the monster's tentacles regenerate rapidly, so he will need the girl's assistance. He circles the giant snail, slicing through its tentacles as he moves. Following Diane's instructions, Lily ignites the severed tentacles. As a result, she ignites all the burnt tentacles, inflicting pain on the monster. He praises her, and she feels an overwhelming sense of pride. After some time, many of the tentacles had already been severed. Diane remembers that once all the monster's tentacles are severed, it will retreat into its shell to heal. As the encyclopedia described, the entrance to the shell is now blocked. Holding a type of spike in his hand, he declares that it's time to use what they brought in the car. Dan explains that the snail's shell is incredibly tough. They will break it from the outside at its weakest point. Imbuing the large spike with mana, he starts to position it carefully. With great strength, he begins hammering it and using his dagger. The little girl watches everything around her, feeling incredibly bored. Outside, the other awakened ones speculate about what is happening behind the fire. The man who can petrify his body remembers Diane's words, implying that there is a more effective way to utilize his abilities. Diane lets out a deep sigh, feeling utterly exhausted. Finally, he has successfully driven in all the spikes. He states that after positioning everyone, they should strike the center of the shell with their strongest blow. He then launches himself toward the shell, channeling mana throughout his body. Using a technique known as ocean martial arts, Thunder Fist, he delivers a powerful strike. As he releases waves of mana around him, he can feel the impact of his own attack. All the spikes begin to connect through the blue lightning. In an instant, the entire shell shatters, revealing the monster within. However, his attack was so powerful that it left his arm completely injured, causing Dad immense pain. He notes that during testing, it appeared that using this technique more than twice a day was excessive. Now, his body is so weakened that he can no longer effectively use his martial arts. Lily begins kicking him, asking if he's paralyzed. In pain, Diane responds that she should help him in situations like this. He notes that at least they managed to defeat the monster. The little girl asks if she should lower the firewall, but he replies no. Diane starts gathering pieces of the monster's tentacles, noting that they are both nutritious and tender. Lily imagines them as snail drumsticks, but Don explains that they are actually a perfect ingredient for mana nourishment. While Diane finishes gathering the meat, the leader of Team 2 approaches and mentions that he heard about the situation and wants to desperately. Diane urges him to wait, promising to extinguish the fire first before allowing him to enter. Dayan searches frantically for the one thing he overlooked, while the Team 2 leader urges him not to overdo it. Grabbing the last piece, he instructs Lily to put out the fire. She forges a path through the flames, leaving all the awakened ones astonished by the spectacle. The man approaches him and asks if Dayan truly defeated the monster by himself. He replies that it was a fierce battle, but he was fortunate to come out on top. All the other awakened ones who had troubled him earlier now wonder how he managed to accomplish what none of them could achieve, even when united. Placing a hand on his shoulder, Dayan asks the leader of Team 2 to take care of the cleanup. The man agrees and tells him to head home. The manager, visibly annoyed, tells him that if his injuries are serious, he should seek treatment at the guild. This leaves him feeling a bit nervous. Lily, looking irritated, expresses that she's tired and hungry. Dayan agrees, acknowledging that she worked very hard today. Handing her various delicious dishes, Dayan tells her they are all his favorites. They can eat as much as they want, which makes the little girl very happy, extremely excited. Lily raises her arms and declares that she'll catch another snail. After drinking some beer, Dayan slams his glass on the table and curses, declaring that this is what they call tasty. Not fully understanding, Lily wonders if she should curse every time she eats something. Suddenly, to Dayan's surprise, Lily shouts an expletive. Wiping his mouth, Dayan tells the child that it's a bad word. She then asks why he uses it. After some time, they found themselves back in the ruins. Dayan meditated, reflecting on his feelings after using the ocean martial art technique. He admitted he felt dead, but it was evident that this was a result of his hard work and the alcohol he had consumed. As he reached for his phone to check the number of calls he had received, he reminded himself that it was an emergency technique and shouldn't be overused. When he finally answered the call, the manager began yelling at him. He explained that he hadn't answered earlier because he had been experiencing intense pain and needed to rest. Having worked a lot the previous day, he seemed a bit off. Awkwardly, she apologized and asked if he was okay. Dayan said he was feeling better and asked what had happened. Yami informed him that she was trying to officially form Team 7 and wanted his opinion. She explained that she needed several members to form a team, including a filming team, a support equipment team, a medical team, an operator to report to the control room, and a secretary. He recognized that the team's success relied on having strong members and suggested to the manager that she should assign a few individuals. Dayan praised her for having a keen eye for spotting talented individuals. This left her a bit surprised. Yami acknowledged this, saying she understood, as she was the one who had recruited him. As she attempted to invite him out, Dayan interrupted, expressing his desire to recruit a superhuman. He told her he wanted to reach Wang Guhou and that she should contact him. The representative advised him to take a 3-day break. Dayan said it was fine, but Chansu advised him that it would be best to complete the mission after all the team members had been assigned. Dayan observed that a few days of rest would benefit him greatly. The representative advised him to rest, emphasizing that he was the future of the guild. The representative started inviting him to play a game, but Dayan redirected the conversation by asking if Lily was hungry. He hummed happily. Excited, she asked if they were going to eat chicken. With a sinister smile, he claimed he would create something tastier than chicken. He explained that, unlike last time, they now had fresh ingredients, including the soft meat of a snail and its internal core. He made a soup that seemed to come straight from the underworld, claiming it might taste strange at first. However, he had included many good things in it. Extremely disappointed, Lily remarked that she had eaten too much chicken and was still full. Dayan, smiling, declared that she could do whatever she wanted. As he began eating, he remarked that it was marvelous and suggested there might not be any left by dinner, leaving Lily extremely curious. When Dayan reached for the pot to serve himself more, Lily interrupted, claiming she would eat it instead. After taking her first spoonful and realizing it tasted horrible, Dayan reminded her that she had promised to eat everything. After finishing, the little girl felt extremely sad, expressing that she had been so happy yesterday. Dayan promised her he would prepare more delicious dishes. Angrily, she replied that she no longer believed him. However, Dayan assured her that there would be pork belly for dinner. It was more expensive than chicken. Adjusting herself in her chair, she remarked that eating it could make life more enjoyable. Dayan wondered where she had picked up such ideas. He said they needed to digest their food before eating anything else. They decided to go on a treasure hunt, which made Lily excited once more. Dayan explained that the monsters who survived the first portal were now living in their own territories. One of these territories was a village overrun by orcs, who kept several artifacts from another dimension. As she gazed at the village, she remarked that he hadn't acquired it in his past life. He planned to take what was inside the statue. Diane noticed that there were around 200 orcs, and even though his body had healed, it would still be too many to fight. He explained that he would enter stealthily and that Lily should ignite the fire as soon as she saw his signal. This left the girl confused, unsure of what signal that could possibly mean. Diane instructed that if a torch fell after he entered, she should set the place ablaze. A small fire burned at the entrance, just large enough to avoid damaging the statue. Diane utilized his stealth ability to infiltrate the village. As he entered, Lily watched from above. Passing the guards, Diane wondered if anyone was strong enough to see him. He observed that around 10 orcs were guarding the statue. As he grasped his dagger, he declared that he could handle this alone. He wielded his blade, carefully observing his opponents. His attention was drawn to a mutated orc chief, the very orc that had displayed incredible strength during the previous attack. Diane picked up a stone from the ground, choosing to stick with the plan. He then threw the stone at one of the torches, causing it to fall. Lily watched as the flame flickered and danced, illuminating the darkness around them. As she watched, she realized that this was the signal Diane had mentioned. To the guard's surprise, she started to intensify the flames of the torches. The mutated orc commanded that they all proceed to the entrance. Diane stated that he only needed to break the statue to obtain what he required. Suddenly, a purple aura emerged. The mutated orc was right behind Diane. Without looking back, Diane concluded that he couldn't fight him, as he was too strong, and decided it was best to flee. He passed through the entrance just as the little girl engulfed it in flames. Diane acknowledged that once he had been seen, it was no longer worth trying to be discreet. Surprised, Lily asked if he had been exposed. Diane replied affirmatively and urged her to run. The monsters continued to chatter in the forest, searching for him. Meanwhile, Lily and Diane sat in the heart of the woods. Diane pondered why it was so challenging, as this should have been the easiest place to hide. Suddenly, Lily exclaimed that she recognized the place. She pointed to a cave, explaining that she had emerged from it after crossing the portal. The little girl explained that those strange uncles had also been there, attempting to catch her. He wondered whether the Red Snake faction had a hideout near a region filled with monsters. Dan started to pet her head, mentally affirming that if this worked, it would be beneficial. With a smile, he suggested they take a look at it. Feeling a bit frightened, she asked if they needed to go in, expressing that she didn't want to. Diane handed her a radio communicator, instructing her to stay hidden and to alert him if anything occurred. He quietly entered the cave. As he walked, he activated his stealth ability once more. Diane walked past an armed soldier. He thought this organization was larger than it appeared. He noticed that the security measures seemed covert and wondered why they had established an outpost next to an orc village. As he ventured deeper, he noticed people hard at work and wondered what tasks they were engaged in. He noticed one of the men holding a package containing a white powder and wondered if it could be something called serpent. He explains that this drug is derived from plants found in another world. Its addictive power has led to the death or disability of countless individuals. The police have been investigating for a long time, but have never discovered the origin, and it seems that it is here. He notices that one package weighs about 50 kilograms, and although there's no certainty, it's possible that it contains hundreds of billions. A person was arguing with a soldier, reprimanding him for failing to meet the quota. The boss instructed the soldier to recruit tools as quickly as possible, while the soldier offered his apologies. Suddenly, several members of the Red Snake are taken by surprise. Everyone is baffled by the fact that an entire shipment of drugs has disappeared. As Diane passes by them, he utilizes his skill. Outside, Diane inquires about the child's whereabouts. She emerges from a bush and asks if it's over. He replies that they're just getting started and announces they're going to play hide and seek. She enters the location where he was hiding the drugs, and he warns her that if she continues to hesitate, she'll lose the game. The soldier emerges from the cave, declaring that he has found them. Diane tells Lily that she needs to demonstrate her abilities. He then looks back and assures her that he will take care of everything. The soldiers start shooting in their direction, but Diane manages to dodge their fire, creating some distance between them. As he dodges bullets, Diane reflects on their impressive marksmanship, while the soldier wonders why he isn't being hit. Diane curses them as he comes to a stop in front of the monsters. With a smile, he remarks that there's something unusual about this place. Suddenly, all the orcs begin to scream as they gaze at the soldiers. They tremble as they stare directly at the monsters. He declares that enough is enough and tells Lily she can come out now. Diane plants himself firmly on the ground. He tosses the drugs toward the monsters. All the members of the Red Snake turn to him, curious about what he's doing. The bewildered monsters stare at the box approaching them. It lands in front of one of them, sparking their curiosity. One of the soldiers asks his superior for guidance on what they should do next. Furious, he orders them to eliminate everyone. Diane activates his skill once more, vanishing from the scene. On the battlefield, soldiers fire their weapons at the advancing monsters. Suddenly, a massive paw crashes into the ground with a resounding thud. The mutant orc was able to stop all the bullets with his body. The superior ordered everyone to focus on the one with white hair first. However, the orc easily kills one of them. The little girl asks him when everything will end, as she is already hungry. Diane notes that things don't always go as smoothly as planned. Observing the situation, Diane notes that he is nearly finished and contemplates whether he should begin cleaning up now. One of the soldiers lies on the ground, begging for help. The massive mutant orc cleaves him in half, roaring as he raises his sword high. Suddenly, he lets out a grunt of pain. Diane had pierced his chest while commending the monster for effectively cleaning up all the trash. The mutant orc collapses to his knees as Diane withdraws the blade from his chest. The other orcs tremble as Diane declares that after defeating the boss, the rest will be easy. He mentally assumes that it won't take long for them to be defeated, as the orcs flee in desperation. After some time, Diane arrives in the village and begins to break the statue. He finally manages to open the chest and places his hand inside. He retrieves the Guardian's bracelets, which possess a unique ability. This ability summons a protective barrier when mana is consumed. As he fastens the bracelet around his wrist, he realizes it truly lives up to its name, even replenishing the mana he had just expended. Lily asks if this is the treasure, and Diane confirms that it is. He asks her to come over to him. Diane fastens the bracelet around the child's wrist. She is surprised and wonders why he is doing this. He explains that it is a bracelet that provides magical protection. The little girl asks if that's true and realizes it's the same as the one he's wearing. As Diane takes the chief's leather to use as a shield, he mentions that they'll eat later, but for now, he needs to return to the cave. The little girl asks why he's going there again. Diane replies that he'll explain later, but for now, he needs Lily to burn everything. She asks if they're going to eat, and he replies no, but insists the food will taste better. Inspired by his words, she becomes motivated and starts summoning a fireball. Lily unleashes her attack, setting the entire orc village ablaze. She sets everything ablaze while shouting that she's hungry and craving something delicious. Recognizing the girl's power, Diane realizes he would be in danger if he left her without food. The soldiers open fire, claiming that the intruder is present. Diane summons his magical barrier and instructs Lily to watch closely, as her bracelet possesses the same ability. He explains that if she becomes accustomed to it, she can change the shape of the shield, while the little girl summons one of her own. Lily claims she can use it to attack her enemies while simultaneously crushing the soldiers on the ground. Diane is even more impressed by such talent. As she demonstrates her shield power, one of the guards apologizes, stating that he will share everything he knows about the organization. With a dark look and a smile, Diane says he doesn't need that and asks if this is where the vault is located. After an hour, they exit the cave just as it explodes behind them. Smiling, Diane remarks that, as expected from a secret hideout, there was a substantial amount of money. Now he has many uses for all of it. He informs Lily that she can remove the shield once the explosion is over. She asks, confused, what would happen if they escaped. Diane explains that only 35 people are left, and they have nowhere to go. They are simply desperate to live life on their own terms. He calls one of them Steamed and orders him to follow, leaving the man confused. The man repeatedly asks why he is being referred to as Steamed. Diane mentions that the man seems to like Steamed, which is why he calls him that, and instructs him to follow the little girl to her tent. He orders everyone present to report to the police station, leaving them to wonder if they will be released. With a deadly glare, Diane warns that if they don't understand, he'll beat them into submission. Fearful, they all agree to surrender. At the police station, the officers start inquiring about what they know regarding the control area and the manipulation of plants. Diane instructs them to go to the police station and make a statement that includes his name. Diane concludes that in this life, Kim must be connected to him in some way. As he leaves, he mentions that Lily worked hard today and suggests that you should buy something delicious for her. She was with the former Red Snake member, throwing a tantrum and complaining that she was hungry. Frightened by the child, he admits that he doesn't understand what she's saying. Angry, the little girl insists that Diane promised her something better than chicken. He hands the bag to Lily, noting its softness, and says, "It's this." She asks if it's not snail again. Diane asks the man to prepare a steamed rice cake. Without hesitation, he agrees and begins the process. He starts the recipe by placing 2 slices of well-cooked pork belly topped with roasted garlic and chopped green onions. He wraps it in perilla and lettuce leaves, instructing them to eat it all in one bite. Diane was about to tell the little girl to eat everything before it got cold, but Lily had already finished her meal and was captivated, exclaiming that it was really good. While not returning to his work, Diane purchases the land surrounding his property. Returning to his tent, Diane, lying in a hammock, admits that he's getting tired of this, leaving his new subordinate feeling hopeful. He starts by explaining that he has been working hard on building a wooden cabin and that his brother should trust him. He shared that he worked as a mason for 3 years, as a cleaner for 2 years, and as a cook for 3 years. Diane reflects on their 3 years of living well together, while Lily praises him, saying his rice cakes are fantastic. Diane believes that the former Red Snake member has become a hostage due to his rice cakes. Since he doesn't know martial arts, he can't escape. Diane believes that steamed will serve him well for the next 3 years until his retirement, after which he plans to give him a long rest. The manager announces that she will take on the role of secretary for the 7th team, as they are new and require someone familiar with the guild. Diane asks if this situation is truly temporary and whether someone will come after her. She laughs and replies affirmatively, explaining that she's too busy to maintain this for long. She hands him a large document, advising him to familiarize himself with its contents. He admits that he should have stayed on break, as the mission involves destroying a portal. Diane wonders if he can refuse missions like this, noting that it's outlined in the contract. Yanni explains that this mission has been requested by the government and that other guilds are also participating. The entire operation is expected to take about 2 days. Diane explains that there are 2 types of portals. Type A, which generates monsters. After you destroy all of the monsters, the portal will close. Type A disappears on its own, while Type B does not vanish after monsters are generated, or even if no monsters are generated when opened. In this case, you must enter the portal, eliminate the monsters, and destroy the core. Noticing the pictures, he realizes that this place is familiar. He realizes that this is one of the worst dungeons after encountering the first portal, the Labyrinth of Corrupted Souls. Diane confesses that it is more notorious now than when it was first mentioned by his instructor. If he had lived in his past life, he would have died. The manager recalls having issues with another guild previously, and if the situation becomes too problematic, they can pass it on to a different guild. Yanni instructs him to behave during the meeting. Dissatisfied, Diane questions whether he is someone who tends to get into conflicts. He mentally prepares for a strong shield when crossing the portal, but Wang Guho faces a contract penalty. The manager and Diane arrive at a large, luxurious building in a car. As they step out of the car, the driver bows and assures him that he will return soon. Diane tells the driver not to do that again in the future, emphasizing that he is already doing his best by giving him a ride. Raising his head once more, the man states that he understands. Yanni praises him, noting his kindness, but Diane internally assumes he prefers not to be around kind individuals. Someone greets him, introducing himself as Kim Ham Tao from Black Hound. He also introduces Wang Guo and team leader Zhang Hyun. Diane greets him, expressing that it's a pleasure to meet him and informing him that he is the buyer. The man insists he heard the story, and it seems Diane is interested in hiring Wang Guho for the White House. With a smile, he states that the Stone Man is a valuable asset for them. As Diane observes him, he suspects that he will demand something outrageous to void the contract. The manager intervenes, stating that she understands Blackhound's position, but they are not willing to pay $50 billion for the contract termination. With a sinister look, he reveals that it's no longer $50 billion, as Diane signed a new contract this morning. This leaves Yanni completely shocked, as he reveals that the penalty for termination has now risen to $100 billion. Diane suspects they are being secretly recorded, so he stands up and suggests they should leave. He concludes that since the manager is the daughter of the owner of the White House, she would be the perfect candidate to be labeled as evil, putting his arm around the Stone Man. Hamtai remarks that the buyer apparently doesn't really need him. He mentions that if Diane changes his mind, he can give him a call. However, it seems the child really enjoyed the cake. A lot has changed, and perhaps they should consider visiting the doctor. Since his victory long ago, Diane silently laments as he delivers a powerful slap to Hamtai's face. The team leader of the Black Hound Guild declares that he's lost his mind and begins preparing to launch a counterattack. However, Diane lands several strikes to his body, leaving him completely stunned. When he looks at Diane, he finds him standing right in front of him, wearing a terrifying expression. With a powerful kick, he sends him crashing out of the room, shattering the door. The two guards who were stationed at the door enter, stating that if he's going to fight, he better be sure he's stronger than Jang Sik-hyun. Extremely irritated, Diane orders them to stop the show and call the guild leader. Young-hee, enchanted, asks if he can still leave people alive even when he's irritated. He responds that she doesn't seem too relieved by this. Diane tells Lily that these situations may arise in the future, so she should take everything they offer. He walks toward Won Gu-ho, convinced that the child is still safe and that all of this could be a deception, but he knows he must press on. With an intensely frightening expression, he states that he will speak with the man later. Suddenly, everyone's attention is captured by a man with an insatiable thirst for blood. As he enters, Diane reveals that this is one of the most powerful humans, a legendary figure from the underworld known as Tae-jin, one of the greatest mages of our time. The man inquires whether Diane has called him and expresses his desire to understand how the situation ended up like this. Waving his hand, Diane promises to share everything, but first, he insists that everyone must be allowed to leave. The manager is perplexed as the guildmaster insists that he is a true friend and will take full responsibility on his own. He asks Lily to join Youngie and head to the guild. Irritated, she asks if she should just burn everything. Dayan scolds her, insisting that she should never use fire without his permission, warning that if she does, she'll never eat chicken again. Dayan sits in front of the master and asks what he desires from him. The master then asks directly if Diane would like to work for him. Dayan states that the penalty for breaking his contract would be too high. With an evil smile, he states that he isn't asking Diane to leave his current guild. Tae-jin states that Diane can continue working with the White House, but he must receive information regularly. The master assures him that he will pay enough. Diane then asks what would happen if he refuses. Releasing some of his mana, Tae-jin declares that in that case, he will have to pay the price for bothering him. Interrupting the negotiation, Chang-soo orders the master to bring the leader of the 17th team to him immediately. Standing in front of the building with a spear in his hand, he declares that if they haven't left by the end of his count, he will enter. As the representative shouts, Dagon suddenly appears behind him, asking what he is doing. He turns around and explains that they have kidnapped one of his leaders, but Dagon counters that they accepted his heartfelt apology. When he tries to call him Chang-soo, Dagon replies that sometimes sincerity is effective. With a smile, Dagon mentions that he heard Tachin has a very close relationship with Jisoo. Dagon warns that it would be disastrous if people discovered the CEO's special relationship with his younger brother's wife. He states that he will remain silent if they accept his terms. First, they must release Wang Guo without any penalties. Second, they need to buy his silence. Dagon remembers that before his return, the master's younger brother found out about his relationship and became entangled with the wife. The representative, filled with rage, demands to know how the master of the Blackhound Guild can be so corrupt, admitting that he has the urge to strike him. The manager, feeling irritated, questions whether he shouldn't be grateful that nothing serious occurred. Meanwhile, Dad wonders why Lily has been so quiet. He places his hand on her head, telling the child that she doesn't need to play with fire. Throwing a tantrum, she declares that she's hungry, leaving Dad even more confused. Yami approaches him and says that the little girl is likely worried as well. A bit confused, he asks if that's really the case. Concluding that this also applies to children, he asks the little girl if she would like to have chicken for dinner tonight. Assuming that the manager or the representative didn't care about him, they wouldn't have made an effort to save him. A short while later, Wang Guho, appearing frightened, approaches him and offers a greeting. He bows and apologizes for what happened, informing Dad that the master forced him to sign the contract. Dad asks him to sit and offers him a drink. Dayan then informs him that the paperwork is already signed, and from now on, he is a tank for their team. Dayan recalls that this man was an orphan, shy, and introverted, which led to him living like a slave and being discarded during the first disaster. A bit awkwardly, the stone man questions why someone like Dayan would choose a partner who is weak and lacks talent. Turning his arms to stone, Wang Guho insists that he should explain his abilities, just in case he is unaware of them. Dayan leans his shoulder against him and asks him to stay still for a moment. He remembers the mobile fortress called Minchu, which will mark the beginning of his incredible career as a... However, Wang currently has greater endurance than the structures initially created by Min, leading Dayan to believe he is superior. Convinced that Wang is superior, he claims that in no more than 6 months, there will be no better tank in Seoul than himself. Extremely surprised, the man begins to say that this is impossible. Dayan assures him that he personally promises this, and that's why he will help him acquire the talent necessary to become the best. At that moment, Sim announces that the food is ready, while the man remains completely captivated by his leader. It was a thick soup filled with chunks of monster meat. Dayan instructs everyone to take 3 bowls in preparation for the labyrinth of corrupted souls. After 2 days, they set out on a mission to hunt monsters. Dayan protects the stone man from a massive white lion. Dayan, now irritated, questions how a tank can feel fear and tells him to start blocking if he has any regrets. Dayan instructs him to get as close as possible and grab the monster, preventing its escape. Dayan explains that he consumed mana nutritional foods for 2 days and also trained as well. For now, he's still in the phase of intensifying his petrification. After seizing the animal, the feline starts to attack him with its claws. Despite his fear and the pain he feels, he continues to hold on to the monster. Dayan states that if he doesn't hold on to the monster for a full minute, they will have to eat 6 plates of mana nutritional food. He tells Lily that the next one will be different. Irritated, she declares that she won't do it because he always serves her tasteless food and never buys chicken. He simply states that tonight's dinner will be chicken, and she begins summoning a fireball, drooling in anticipation. She launches her attack, and together they defeat the monster. As Lily and Dayan argue, the stone man realizes that, in comparison to them, he is incredibly weak. Dayan requests the control room to locate another monster, while secretly admitting to himself that he needs more creatures to conduct his tests. Yang Mi informs him that there's a monster at 7 o'clock, but another team from the Warrior Guild is closer. He inquired about the specific distance, and she replied that they are 2 kilometers apart. The other team is 1 kilometer away. Dayan instructs the little girl to follow him and assist the rookie. They begin arguing once more, while Wang Gua remains frightened. In the blink of an eye, Dayan takes off at full speed. He confesses that he didn't neglect to strengthen himself, consuming the mana nutritional foods alongside his training. Meanwhile, some of the awakened ones are rushing toward the monster. Suddenly, Dayan rushes past them, declaring that he is in a hurry. The opposing team begins to prepare for a long-range attack. Whoever lands the first blow gets priority when claiming reward. He unleashes an attack known as Heavenly Palace, swiftly striking the monster with his blade. As he complains about his belt, the awakened ones speculate whether he might be a speed attack specialist. He tells the manager that the hunt is over and inquires if another one is on the way. After a while, Lily proudly shows off her accomplishment, asking if they'll be having chicken now. Yang He announces that the portal has closed and expresses gratitude to Team 7 for their efforts, while Dayan assures everyone that they will handle the situation from there. Some people approach them, including Ilnam from the medical team, who asks if Dayan is okay. He agrees and asks the guy to help Lily wash her hands. His brother Lee Nan just finished filming and says the video turned out amazing. He wants to show it to Lear. As he reviews the footage, Sol from the equipment support team asks him to raise his arms for a better view. Dayan states that the 3 Cheon brothers selected by Young Hee will soon achieve fame in their respective fields. He's curious about how she manages that. He admits he hasn't memorized their names yet, but in future dungeons, he promises to give them a good rest and a bonus. With a smile, Dayan requests that they look after his team in the future. The brothers begin to express that he is the best leader. Already in the car, the driver comments that Dayan is quite popular. He denies it, stating that he only observes the feelings of those present in the field. Dayan confesses that he has already followed orders without hesitation. He questioned them, growing tired and ultimately deciding to leave the guild. However, his teammates shouldn't have to bear the weight of his frustrations. The manager of the Smile claims he knows how to handle people exceptionally well, suggesting that this may be his second life. She stops joking and hands him a document related to the purchase of a specific item, while also informing him that his weapon will be ready in 2 days. Young Hee asks if this is the person he has been searching for, noting that it was very difficult to locate him, only managing to do so through a video. He has been searching for Young Shin Jang, the only person in Korea with the ability to create. Dayan then inquires about the boy's whereabouts. Meanwhile, Lily, wearing a beret, reminds Dad to remember to buy 4 portions of boneless chicken and a large serving of fries. They walk together down the street, and Dayan assures her that he will keep his promise. He emphasizes that Lily must relay everything exactly as he taught her. With a cheerful expression, she agrees. The two enter a hair salon and are warmly greeted. The brown-haired girl cutting Dayan's hair remarks on the many toys in the area. In response, she explains that her son loves to engage in a variety of activities. Lily sits on the couch and complains that she is bored, but Diane tells her to be quiet. Curious, she notices a comment that she finds very cute. Meanwhile, Diane, now sporting a fresh haircut, looks worried and warns Lily not to touch anything, as it might break. She hugs a chicken toy and exclaims that it's the same one she loves so much. The hairdresser then explains that her son made that toy and offers for them to take it if they'd like. Diane apologizes and notes that his cousin is very energetic. The woman smiles and assures him it's not a problem, especially since there are plenty of toys around. He then inquires about her son's age, and she replies that he is 13 years old. At that moment, Diane recalls a photograph of a boy with his mother and considers that young Shin, the hairdresser's son, might have Samine syndrome. He reflects on this rare condition where individuals with developmental disabilities possess exceptional abilities in specific areas of knowledge. Diane imagines that, as a result, the boy's social skills may be limited. Diane reflects on his tendency to avoid interactions with others. As he gazes at his reflection in the mirror, he realizes that, unlike other superhumans, he must approach young Shin in a more natural way. To achieve this, he decides to start visiting the salon more frequently. The hairdresser remarks that her son is likely busy creating something new in the closet at that very moment. Diane inquires if that's true and expresses hope that her loud conversations aren't disturbing him. Meanwhile, young Shen, surrounded by books and tools, is intently focused on assembling a device. His mother assures Diane that it won't be a problem, as her son becomes so immersed in his projects that he barely notices what is happening around him. With a serious expression, Diane thinks that, since they weren't whispering, the boy should have heard the conversation if he were superhuman. He wonders if it is worth checking on him now. Suddenly, young Shen clutches the screwdriver tightly in his hand. He leaves the room and asks his mother if everything is okay. Surprised, she questions why he came out without anyone calling for him. Dan deduces that, since he emerged immediately, he must be able to sense mana, confirming to himself that the boy is, indeed, a superhuman. Meanwhile, Lily wears a mischievous expression, convinced that it's time to put her chicken plan into action. Smiling, she pushes the chicken toy toward young Shin and asks if he made it, complimenting its adorable appearance. The boy, feeling a bit suspicious, asks if she is curious. Lily responds that she is. Blushing, she clasps her hands together and, with admiration, remarks that the toy is amazing and that he possesses a great deal of talent. Young Shin's cheeks flush as he remarks that it's nothing special. Excited, Lily responds that it's really cool and adds that she loves chicken before asking another question. Young Shin replies that he prefers pizza. Diane observes the conversation and thinks that while Lily still has some difficulty speaking Korean, she is making a commendable effort. The black-haired boy mentions that he has many different things and asks if he can show them. Diane is surprised, while Lily inquires if it's true. Excitedly, she exclaims that it would be interesting to see. The hairdresser, taken aback, expresses her disbelief that young Shin actually spoke to someone. Diane reflects on how this little boy has truly fallen for her. Lily sits across from young Shin in his room. Diane believes they have successfully recruited someone capable of creating equipment for superhumans, valued at hundreds of billions. He envisions young Shin extending his hand forward, a robot standing behind him, while Lily excitedly exclaims about the 4 portions of boneless chicken waiting for her. Diane concludes that young Shin joined the guild the very next day, and just a few days later, he designed battle uniforms. Dressed in a white cloak, he remarks that it is indeed true Leader X's skin is perfect for the uniform. She then asks Lily what she thinks of the new clothes. The girl, wearing a green jacket and pants, exclaims that the uniform is both comfortable and beautiful. She is delighted to see an embroidery of chicken and pizza on the sleeves. It reminds her of when young Shin mended his sweater. As she approached him, she thought that Lily liked chicken while he preferred pizza. Diane approaches to discuss the uniform, but with a serious expression. He states that it's not necessary. He reflects on the fact that he has done everything he could in a short period. Univi informs the group that the support team has completed their preparations and must leave immediately. Diane turns to the members and announces that it is time to move forward. Univi closes her eyes, smiles, and asks Diane if he has changed his style, noting that it must be difficult to maintain that hairstyle. With disheveled hair, he wears a displeased expression, realizing it's no surprise that there were no alliances in the hair salon. Univi yells, demanding to know what someone is talking about and what it means that another guild entered first. Suddenly, a portal appears in the middle of the road. A man informs the girl that he permitted their entry because they claimed the coup order had changed. Unify yells, demanding that the brown-haired boy repeat what he just said. Diane reflects on the 4 guilds participating in the joint task. He envisions their emblems: a white tiger for the warriors, a bull for the bull guild, a red shark for the shark guild, and a black wolf for the black hound. He realizes that, at first glance, it was evident these 3 guilds were attempting to mock them. Closing his eyes, Diane tells Yui and the brown-haired boy that this confrontation will not change anything and that they should stick to the original plan. The girl looks away, revealing her nervousness, and comments that even if they left now, there probably wouldn't be anything left. She apologizes, acknowledging that she should have prepared better. Diane claps his hands, encouraging everyone not to worry in advance. He adds that, who knows, they might discover something even better. Traces of blood are found beneath a car. Diane observes the scene and notes that everything has been cleaned up. Solar responds that it's fine, since after all, it is a dungeon. 3 cars drive down the road, 2 hours after entering the Fallen Spirits Labyrinth. Diane had intended to offer a ride, but they missed the opportunity. Behind him, So smiled, believing that resting was beneficial. Diane reflected that it didn't matter, as they would meet again. Suddenly, images of several circuits flashed in his mind. He recalled that the Labyrinth of Fallen Spirits had begun easily, but after repeated failures, it transformed into the most challenging dungeon. Staying vigilant, he commanded everyone to halt. He noticed something strange occurred, and Go was instructed to stay behind to protect the machines. Moving past the stopped vehicles, Don entered the dark passage, its walls covered in cracks. He reflected that the dungeon earned its name because it transformed those who entered it into monsters. And then were confused by what they saw. 3 zombies dressed in red were approaching the group. Diane examined their clothing and deduced that they were likely members of the Red Shark Guild. He observed one of the dead, a man with long hair, and noticed bite marks on him. The shark teeth were capable of piercing even a combat uniform. He deduced that this must have occurred when they let their guard down. Perhaps they had been separated from the rest of the guild, which would explain their small numbers. Diane halted his march and instructed Go to move ahead and showcase the results of his training. Go hesitated, pointed to himself, and asked if he really had to go alone. In a serious tone, Diane replied that even a scratch could lead to infection. Frightened, Go replied that in that case, he couldn't risk being bitten. Diane gave him a gentle push and urged him not to be a coward. Determined, Go clenched his fists and ran toward the zombies, their arms outstretched toward him. Part of his face and hands had turned to stone, but he declared that he would try. Diane observed that his petrified state was an improvement compared to his training. He then warned him not to kill him. Worried, Go asked what he should do, and Diane replied that he would have to figure it out on his own. Go struck one of the zombies in the head, and it staggered back, momentarily stunned. Excitedly exclaimed that he had successfully hit. Lily sighed, feeling bored, and asked Diane if they could simply burn them. As he watched the battle unfold, Diane replied that they weren't just civilians. They were also members of another guild, so she shouldn't think about killing them. He asked the support team how things were progressing. One of the members, holding a camera, exclaimed that they were already recording everything. Dan explained that they were capturing these images to demand compensation. They should film accurately. Holding up sets of clothes, she announced that she had finished preparing the repellent suits. Diane replied that they would quickly finish the fight and put them on. Elon, holding a bag, reported that he had brought the antidote and placed his trust in Diane. Diane responded that this was excellent news, as the antidote was the most crucial item in a dungeon like that. With a firm gaze, he observed Go as he skillfully blocked the zombies' attacks surrounding him. Diane believed that the members of the Red Shark Guild support team had succumbed easily to the disease, while the others continued to resist. Suddenly, 2 zombies attacked Go simultaneously, causing him to grit his teeth in pain. Diane observed that the way they moved indicated these zombies were superhuman. Island struck one of the zombies, while Diane hit another in the nape with 2 fingers, proudly declaring that he had knocked out the first one. He quickly moved behind another zombie and struck at the nape, bringing down the second one as well. With a few additional blows, he watched as the 3rd and 4th zombies fell to the ground. Surprised, Go asked how Diane could accomplish that so easily, standing among the defeated enemies. Diane counted the 5th zombie, looked around, and asked if anyone was left. He then announced to the group that they had finished the fight. Closing his eyes, he instructed Tank to line up the bodies. Go, impressed, accepted the order with admiration on his face. Diane recalled the bag containing vials of yellow liquid and reflected on the remarkable antidote for zombie venom. He imagined a wasp and considered that after being bitten by a zombie, a person had only 10 minutes before he began to act uncontrollably. After another half hour, he would transform into a worker, tasked with protecting the zombie's hive. Dark images of the undead flashed through his mind. He tested an antidote on a defeated zombie and concluded that, after half an hour of infection, those affected would still experience cognitive difficulties. Turning to Lily, Joe, and Anam, he ordered them to step back so he could concentrate. With a sinister smile, he addressed the terrified survivors on the ground, declaring that he had saved them. Now it was their turn to help. Dan, holding a syringe, believed that those with talent could concentrate on their skills and refine them. However, as survival rates rose, individuals like him had to learn multiple skills. He explained that this was why, in his past life, he journeyed through different dimensions. On the continent of Gaia, a bridge spans the Mayam River in front of the castle. A grand staircase leads up to a building featuring a curved roof. Under a purple underworld light, a building stands among the rocks, and a clock emerges from a tangle of gears. On the continent of Byron, Diane reflects on how he has managed to survive thanks to the magical and martial arts he learned during his travels. He blew the whistle and recalled that one of the techniques he had learned was an animal control method specifically designed for creatures with low intelligence levels. The main character announces to the members of the Red Shark Guild that they will now fight alongside them. He asks if they understand, and seeing the recovered men smiling cheerfully, he smiles slightly and, with a small grin, says that since they have agreed, they can begin hunting the zombie bees and following his orders. He then commands them to advance. Goho, exhausted and dressed in a closed yellow suit, Diane shouts that he has captured the queen bees, but there are too many surrounding him. Behind him, 3 people in suits are engaged in a fight while he carries a box. Diane praises the tank and, looking at Lily, asks her to burn the food so they can eat it later. The girl agrees, forming a fireball above her and extending her hands forward, from which a powerful flame emerges. Goho rushes to her side. Diane remarks that he didn't expect the Red Shark members to assist them so enthusiastically. Meanwhile, a volleyball bounces off the wall as Lily and the others, dressed in red, engage in a playful sword fight. Dan asks the commander if he has done anything suspicious to them. He crosses his arms and states that, as they had informed him, they would be happy to help as a way to repay their debt. Dan extends his hand to the side and announces that they have completed the verification of the anti-insect suit and can now proceed. The brown-haired boy standing next to Lily nods in agreement. Diane signals to the group to halt as someone approaches. A person in boots strides across the stone floor, and 3 muscular men in black hoodies emerge ahead. Lily exclaims that they are the same ones she saw with the slugs, while Diane watches them with a suspicious expression. The warrior guild is on the move. 5 guys in black hoodies and Lily are playing with a volleyball. Diane sighs, adjusts his hair, and expresses his hope that they are not only grateful, but also prepared to correct their mistakes. With a serious expression on his face, he suddenly realizes that everything is simpler than he had imagined. On the 4th day in the dungeon, Enum, holding a box, informs Diane that the monsters have reached the supplies and devoured them. Diane extends his hand and asks to take a look. He analyzes the marks and concludes that, based on the clues, they must be close by. Lily whistles, prompting the members of the Warrior Guild and the Red Shark to rush toward the Red Rats. Diane observes Lily as she pets one of the warriors, who is sitting obediently like a dog. He realizes that this makes things even easier for him, as she enjoys exerting control over them. Nearby, remnants of defeated and poisoned red rats lie scattered on the ground. Diane closes his eyes and lowers his head, reflecting on the various situations he had prepared for. Everything seemed to be going well, but he knew he couldn't let his guard down. He reminded himself that the boss-level monsters were still lurking somewhere nearby. Red smoke billows between the columns. Several zombies dressed in black and red clothing fill the room. A bat, known as the demonic mirror bat, holds a mirror with its horns. Diane believed this was the mid-boss. He orders his team to prepare for battle and instructs them to leave the vehicles behind. He tells Go to advance and then whistles. After that, the fighters from the Warrior Guild and the Red Sharks charged at their enemies. Dan believed he had brainwashed both the Red Sharks and the Warriors, thinking that the mirror would have no effect on them. He believed that this monster cast illusions on anyone who looked into the mirror, transforming them into its minions. 3 men with malicious smiles charged toward Diane's group. Dan believed the rest of his team needed to exercise caution. The main character shouted, "Bello, don't look at his mirror." Tank wore a worried expression on his face. He wants to speak, his voice trembling, but Diane and Lily shout at him, labeling him a coward and calling him immature. The main character instructs the girl to create a fire shield to prevent the enemies from advancing. Diane gestures to the side, instructing everyone to move at least 2 kilometers away while he gathers information before joining them. He points to the cars as members of the Warrior Guild and the Red Sharks rush toward them. Lily, with fireballs hovering above her hands, asks Diane if it's worth burning everything here. Diane replies that under normal circumstances, he would agree, but for now, she should extinguish the flames. He uses camouflage to blend in. Holding Lily in his arms, he walks past Go, who is left confused about his sudden disappearance. The girl crosses her arms, believing that Go is a foolish coward. The main character, wearing a tired expression, wonders where the bat has gone. He pulls 3 daggers from his pocket, and he throws them at the bat, but misses. An orange light emanates from the bat's mirror. The main character believes that camouflage is ineffective against it. He closes Lily's eyes and reflects that the enemy was darting back and forth, not moving in a straight line. It was wise to take a step back for now, to better understand its movements. Enum smiles as he addresses the commander, letting him know that he is back. Behind him stands Sola. While Eel is positioned in front of him, Enum then asks Diane if he is injured. The main character extends his hand and announces that he will explain to everyone what to do. He emphasizes that there is little time, so they must hurry. A bat flits through a shadowy corridor. Diane turns and instructs the technical support team to retreat. A team member shouts that the fortification is complete and that they are pulling back. Diane commands them to prepare for battle. Members of the Warrior Guild and the Red Sharks take their positions behind metal shields. The bat opens its mouth wide. 2 zombies raise their hands, and one of them screams. Zombies launch an assault on the shields that protect the allied guild members as they take cover. Diane leaps off the ground and swings the bat. The monster swiftly dodges Diane's attack, prompting him to call out to Lily. The girl puts on her sunglasses and unleashes fireballs at the bat. The monster skillfully dodges the fireballs. Lily grits her teeth, filled with frustration. The bat lets out a malicious laugh. Diane activates the shield ability, creating a barrier near the monster. Diane leaps into action, launching an attack on the monster, but the bat skillfully evades. Lily creates a shield beneath Diane's feet. He gazes at the enemy, confident that no matter how fast they move, he will be able to see them. How many attacks can he dodge? Diane hurls a dagger toward the bat. He swiftly slashes at the bat, severing its head. The main character smirks maliciously and declares that he will claim the mirror for himself. He declares that the end has arrived. Nearby, a blue gate stands, its horns jutting out from the wall. The main character instructs them not to lower their guard just because they have just arrived. The healers push open the gate. Lily, her face etched with worry, asks how long the little coward will continue like this. Govo stands behind him, casually placing his hand behind his head, dismissing it as nothing. Diane, wearing a serious expression, states that he intends to leave him alone until they defeat the boss. He adds that he has a feeling that otherwise, he might be brainwashed again. Behind the gate, a figure in a hood stands alone in the middle of the hall. It is a skeleton with blue flames emanating from its eyes. He examined Diane's group more closely. The spirit hunter, a skeleton clad in armor and wielding a sword, spoke in an unknown language. Diane whistled, and many healed guild members gathered, with Govo leading the way. He rushed toward the enemy and asked the skeleton if he was one of his fans. The skeleton opened its mouth and let out a chilling scream. Govo's hands and part of his face had turned to stone, yet he still insisted that hugs were always welcome. When he was struck by the young man, Govo defended himself with his stone hands, successfully blocking the attack. With a look of concern on his face, Govo referred to the skeleton as a hater. The skeleton then unsheathed its sword. Diane believed that Govo was a bit shy but was handling the situation well. He added that this was the moment he had been training for. Members of various guilds encircled the skeleton. The skeleton let out a scream, and a large blue circle materialized on the ground. It had used Spirit Link, a long-range magic that turned nearby individuals into puppets. Diane, wearing a slight smile, believed that this magic would not affect them. 2 members of the Warriors Guild were attacking the enemy from behind. An orange glow radiated from the mirror on the back of Diane's hand, and he realized that the mirror from the defeated demon bat, along with its little trick, had kept them under mental control. The spiritual connection became meaningless as Govo found himself wrapped in red energy chains. With a joyful expression, he thought it was wonderful to be a celebrity. The startled skeleton spun around. It grasped the sword with both hands. Govo seized the enemy's sword and declared that he loved it as well. Diane informed Lily that she would be leaving soon, to which the girl responded that she understood. An orange glow radiated from the skeleton's eyes as it activated the Spirit Hunter's second ability. It employed demonic summoning, causing a magic circle to materialize. Numerous red circles appeared around the skeleton, radiating energy. Diane wondered if this was monkey summoning magic, and noted that he had prepared for this in advance. From the energy, many smiling monkeys emerged. Flames erupted from Lily's hand. The skeleton was now surrounded by flickering flames. The girl extended her hand forward and flames erupted before her. She then declared that they would burn everything here and later enjoy some chicken. Concern was evident on the skeleton's face. Diane withdrew his hand and told Lily that she was smart and would be responsible for dealing with the monkeys. The skeleton made an angry expression and threw a sword at Govo, who managed to deflect it. Diane, wearing a worried look, seemed to have seen something but chose to pretend he hadn't. Meanwhile, Govo, standing behind Diane, embraced the sword with a look of deep affection. Diane believed it wasn't his turn to join the fight just yet. Meanwhile, the three healed fighters launched their attack on the skeleton. Diane stood with his arms crossed, observing the battle, convinced that his objective was to clear the dungeon safely and with minimal effort. He added that once those bastards had exhausted their strength, he would join in. An hour later, the skeleton let out a piercing scream as golden energy radiated from its eyes. Diane believed this was the moment and let out a whistle. Two healed turned to face him. Diane placed his hand on his belt and asked the skeleton if it was tired of waiting, urging it to finish this quickly. The skeleton's eyes glowed red as it spoke to Diane in unfamiliar language. The enemy uttered something that Diane couldn't comprehend, but it appeared to label him a cowardly scoundrel. It further expressed a hope that its words were clear to him. The skeleton swung its fist at Diane, who swiftly dodged to the side. Diane reflected on how some people had no choice. They could only live this way. He presented the enemy with the back of his palm, revealing a mirror that began to glow. The skeleton opened its mouth. Diane believed it couldn't be brainwashed by the mirror of illusion, but it might let its guard down for just a moment. The main character clenched his fist, which was soon surrounded by a surge of blue energy. He unleashed the skill Lightning Strike Fist, delivering a blow to the skeleton infused with powerful, crackling energy. The enemy's armor was shattered, revealing cracks in its body. Diane suddenly realized something and opened his eyes in surprise. He saw a blue crystal, the Spirit Stone, and believed that not even high-level magic stones could compare to it. This treasure granted its bearer the ability to perform miracles. He added that this was also the reason he had chosen to enter the fallen spirit's labyrinth. He removed the Spirit Stone from the enemy's body, declaring that he would make good use of it. Lily, her expression filled with worry, asked if it was all over. Diane, wearing a malicious smile, held the stone in his hand. He believed this was an incredible discovery and envisioned a muscular, shirtless version of himself enveloped in blue energy. He added that he would now be able to harness transformation. He rested his chin in his hand and imagined himself sunbathing on the beach. He considered that if he completed this task, his body would enter an optimal state due to his mastery of martial arts. But that wasn't his main interest. He wanted to slow down aging and extend his lifespan so he could enjoy his youthful body long after retirement, which was just 3 years away. Lily, her eyes wide with curiosity, asked Diane what he was holding and if it was tasty. Diane switched the stone between his hands and told Lily that it was indelible and she would get sick if she tried to eat it. With an irritated expression, the girl asked Diane why he had attempted to eat it himself. Diane clenched the stone with a smile, while confusion spread across Lily's face. The stone in Diane's hand disintegrated into dust. Lily looked at Diane with disappointment, thinking that the stone would have fetched $1 million at auction if he had chosen not to use it. The girl asked Diane, who was feeling his knees, if he had truly stopped fighting. Diane wondered why the stone had vanished. He glanced at the watch on his arm, noticing that the hands were moving rapidly. Diane, wearing a malicious smile, believed this meant the watch was powered by magical energy. The reporter noted that the 4 guilds, united by a single goal, the task of destroying the gates, should not have returned by now. He added that 10 days had passed. Halfway through their mission, outside the enclosed area, there was a portal. The reporter stated that experts believed they were dead. Yuvi watched the report on her smartphone, her face reflecting deep sadness. The man asked her if she was here again, and she referred to him as Uncle. A man in a black shirt, holding his spear, assures the girl that the second team will return unharmed, so she shouldn't worry too much. Commander Ban Wook of the Second White House listens intently as Yuni, her expression filled with concern, averts her gaze to the side. She informs him that the other guilds have no plans to send rescue teams. Despite her worries, she acknowledges that his team is more than capable of clearing an A-ranked dungeon. However, caution is still advised. The man assures her that everything is fine and that she can count on him. Wohulk stands near the portal with his men and commands them to move. The portal starts to spin faster. Wohulk shouts for his people to wait, warning them that something is happening with the gate and they need to prepare for battle. Diane steps through the portal, followed closely by Lily. Then, cars begin to emerge as well. Wolhuk approaches Diane, smiling warmly. UV embraces Diane, catching him completely off guard. Diane, wearing an annoyed expression, asks the girl what she's doing and tells her that there's a child sitting on his back, so she should let him go. UV then asks Diane what caused his delay, to which he replies that some unforeseen circumstances arose. This shouldn't be discussed in front of everyone. The girl insists, saying she was genuinely worried. Exhausted, Lily remains on Diane's back, lacking the strength to continue and just wanting to go home. Impatiently, Diane waits for the application processing as a reporter announces that superhumans have returned alive, thanks to the White House. The report emphasizes the dangers of the portal and the ongoing disputes between guilds. Meanwhile, his driver brings up the national debate surrounding their actions. Diane glances out the window and replies that this situation only gives him more headaches. He turns his head slightly and asks the driver if he mentioned that it hadn't rained while he was in the dungeon. The driver confirms, stating that the sky remained clear without a single cloud. Above the city, a rainbow stretches across the horizon. The driver then asks if he is interested in the sight and mentions that the rainbow first appeared 4 days ago. With a cautious expression, Diane reflects that this is not a natural phenomenon, but a premonition of the first great catastrophe. In his mind, he envisions a rainbow against a cloudy sky, believing that, color by color, it will begin to fade away. On the night of the 7 moons, the disaster will begin, marking the day it vanishes completely. He envisions monsters emerging from countless portals and recalls that, in the past, he narrowly escaped by finding shelter. Now, everything is different. Lily sleeps next to him on the couch. He raises his hand, clenches it into a fist, and believes he is stronger than ever before. With a determined gaze, he observes his own hand and recalls the watch that absorbed mana from the spirit stone. Lily, dressed in an elegant red dress adorned with a bow and roses, remarks that the waist feels a bit tight. Daeon, dressed in a formal black suit and a white shirt, holds up a white and yellow outfit and suggests that she wear overalls instead. However, Lily quickly refuses, calling them ugly. He then asks her what she would suggest instead. He remembers Unity, who with a displeased expression questioned how Lily could possibly not own a formal dress. Did she really only have loungewear? Diane, maintaining a serious demeanor, thinks that since the dress was a gift for Lily, she would be upset if she didn't wear it. Therefore, he insists that she go with that outfit, assuring her that if she feels uncomfortable, she can change later. Excited, Lily agrees and praises him, calling him a genius. Diane recalls that when the team returned safely from the dungeon, a celebration was held at the White House. Keynes, standing beside his daughter, raises his hand and announces the arrival of the great heroes of the night. He warmly embraces Diane, expressing that he always knew they would return alive. Diane, however, stares at the guild leader and, with an ironic tone, asks if he intends to kill him personally. Meanwhile, Unity compliments Lily, saying that the dress looks great on her. Smiling, Lily thanks her for the gift. The young woman with black hair observes Lily and comments that her way of speaking is improving every day. Shin, his cheeks flushed, invites Lily to join him for dinner. The girl presses her palms together and happily accepts the invitation. Unity covers her mouth, delighted by the scene as she thinks about how adorable it is. Lily approaches Shin and inquires about what they will be eating. Dayan observes the crowd gathering around the tables and thinks that everyone appears to be enjoying the evening. He reflects on how, at the Blackhound Guild, he could never have imagined something like this. Just then, the guild leader turns to speak with him. Tonight, Dayan, holding a glass in his hand, looks back. Kane Song, smiling, asks about his goals. Dayan inquires what he means by that. Kane Song responds that he is curious to learn about the dreams of young people today. He asks Diane if he wants to become the strongest in the world or amass unimaginable wealth. Diane sighs and replies that his goal is to retire. He explains that he plans to earn a substantial amount of money. He built a 99,900 square meter mansion, invited his friends, and did whatever he wanted. Confusion was evident on the faces of Kane Song, Yeo, and Unity. The Blackhound girl closes her eyes and tells her dad that his goal is wonderful. Go, wearing a happy expression, remarks that a peaceful life seems like a wonderful idea. Surprised, Chan Suk asks Diane if he wants to become stronger by training with him. Uni turns to the guild leader, her expression filled with irritation. Dayan, maintaining a serious demeanor, reflects that he initially aimed only to evade the dangers of the future. However, he now recognizes his potential for growth and has discovered trustworthy companions by his side. The rainbow in the sky is becoming more transparent. Dayan believes that if disasters are inevitable, it's worthwhile to devise a plan to make the most of the situation. A bright light shines on the lake, and Chan's son, clenching his fists, remarks that he never expected to find such a beautiful lake in the forbidden territory. Standing beside him are Diane, Go, and Lily. He removes his clothes and runs into the water, exclaiming that being close to nature has revitalized his spirit. Uni, dressed in a swimsuit, sits on a cloth and calls out to Diane. Turning his head toward her, he hears her request to apply some sunscreen on her back, as she can't reach it herself. Diane reaches behind his back and suggests that she practice stretching, noting that he can do it without any problems. Irritated, Uni responds by asking if he couldn't just agree. Dayan gestures toward Go and Rice Cake, indicating that if she needs assistance, she can reach out to them. She glances at Rice Cake and realizes she hasn't greeted him yet. Curious, she asks who he is. The young man, taken aback, thinks the beautiful girl might be interested in him. He approaches Diane, presses his palm against his chest, and introduces himself as MJ, also known by the nickname Red Bean Rice Cake. Uni brushes her hair back with a smile and tells MJ that she's happy to meet him, but they aren't that close yet. Dayan, feeling irritated, warns the young man that if he makes a comment like that again, he will give him a new name. With a menacing glare, he suggests that they call him Blood Pie. Beads of sweat trickle down MJ's face. Dayan waves at the guild leader and challenges him to a swimming competition. Khan's son responds that it sounds fun. With a smile, Dayan declares that whoever reaches the other side of the lake first will be the winner. He takes off his clothes and leaps into the water. Dayan and Khan soon swim swiftly across the lake. With a nervous expression, Dayan considers that the guild leader is the first superhuman, which makes him incredibly fast. Khan's song is far ahead, and Dayan envisions that, thanks to him, he might accomplish a remarkable feat. Suddenly, Khan's song spots something beneath the water. A massive red octopus rises before him. With an enraged expression, he glares at the monster and demands to know how it dares to interrupt his competition. He leaps high into the air, raising his fist in preparation to strike. He struck a powerful blow against the octopus. The monster had a large dent on its forehead. Khan's son unleashed a flurry of strikes against the creature. Dayan, with a curious expression, observed that Khan's song was fighting with his bare hands. He believed it would be beneficial to have him by his side. As he swam closer to the octopus, he asked the leader if he was all right. Dayan remarked that he hadn't anticipated a monster appearing in that location. Khan soon turned to him and expressed his relief that Dayan was unharmed, noting that the Forbidden Zone was full of surprises. He looked toward the shore and realized they had drifted quite far away. Concerned for the others, he suggested they head back. Dayan agreed, but mentioned he would stay a little longer to examine the lakebed. Khan soon then asked if he would do that alone. He swam toward the shore, calling out to Dayan not to take too long, as they would be waiting for him for dinner. Dayan watched as Song's son departed, believing that he had already cleared the area they were in, so monsters shouldn't appear. Activating his shield ability, he dove into action as a barrier formed around his head. As he surveyed his surroundings, he realized that the Kraken had likely perished due to its interference with him. However, he noted that the true danger awaited him in the depths. Sinking deeper and deeper, he envisioned that a treasure was surely hidden below. Suddenly, he noticed a bright, intense glow. Dayan peeked through a crack in the wall and realized he had finally found what he was looking for. Now, he could return to the others and enjoy his vacation. Later, he would return with the baby. However, a whirlpool suddenly formed nearby. His eyes widened with surprise. The current started to pull him in. The barrier surrounding his head vanished. He reached his hand forward, cursing his own weakness in his mind. He recalled that he had promised to return soon. He called out for Lily, and she suddenly turned around as if she had heard him. Uni observed the two of them as young Shin handed a strange food item to Lily, urging her to eat it before the commander returned. Grateful, the girl thanked him and took a drink from a cup. Excitedly, she declared that she would finish eating before he got back. A greenish glow radiated from a crack. Inside a cave near an underground lake, there was a shoreline. Droplets of water fell onto Dayan's head. He slowly opened his eyes. Beside him, a fairy gasped in surprise at his awakening. Another fairy asked what they should do. A third, looking worried, questioned whether something bad was going to happen. The long-haired fairy frowned and asked Dad who he was. He observed them closely and thought he recognized these creatures. Raking at the ropes that bound him, he asked the fairies if they were the ones who had brought him to this place. Startled, one of them screamed that he had broken free. Another declared his love for evil, while a third clutched her head and cried out in desperation that he was going to destroy them. Dad stepped inside and reassured the hidden fairies that he wouldn't harm them, urging them to calm down. He envisioned a green branch of a plant and reflected on how the continent of Noel was home to magical plants, animals, and fairies. He remembered that during his few months working there as a guide, he only encountered fairies in the clear water. In his mind, he envisioned a long-haired fairy with hair tips that appeared to be covered in snow. He recognized that Snowflake was one of the representatives of the kind, innocent fairies. He asked the fairies if they were snowflakes. The long-haired fairy looked at him in surprise and asked if he recognized them. Curious, she asked if Diane had ever been to Noel. Another fairy inquired whether he could truly speak their language. With a worried expression, Diane requested that they take turns asking their questions. With a serious expression, he reflected on the fact that in his past life, there was no information about fairies living in that place. If events were changing, it could pose a significant problem. He decided to ask what they were doing there, and the fairies' expressions turned somber. The long-haired fairy explained that they lived in a lake, but suddenly they were transported to another dimension. Diane concluded they must be referring to the first gate. Meanwhile, 3 fairies flew over the lake, their expressions filled with concern. The long-haired fairy reported that monsters had emerged, fought amongst themselves, and devoured one another. The octopus ended up killing many of them. 3 fairies fled from a massive octopus, and Diane realized they were referring to the kraken. A curly-haired fairy, smiling, explained that because of this, they hid at the bottom of the lake, where they found refuge. Diane crossed his arms, recognizing that they have faced a difficult situation. He reflected on their past extermination, noting that there was no record of their existence. The long-haired fairy, her expression filled with concern, revealed that they had no future. They were weakening from the lack of sunlight and couldn't leave because of the octopus. With a serious expression, Diane informed them that the octopus was dead and that they could leave now. The fairies were taken aback by the news. The long-haired fairy urged Diane not to lie. He extended his hand, suggesting they check for themselves. The fairy nodded in agreement and declared that they would indeed see for themselves. She brushed Diane's palm with her tail, and a green glow radiated from their touch. Other fairies gasped in amazement as they witnessed the scene unfold. They exclaimed in wonder that it was true, for the color was unmistakably green. The short-haired fairy and the curly-haired fairy fluttered around Diane, expressing their gratitude for avenging them and granting them their freedom. Diane placed a hand on his head and, with an annoyed expression, asked them to stop as their movements were making him dizzy. He walked through the cave, with the fairies following closely behind. One of them excitedly exclaimed that they were now friends, and Diane readily agreed. He reflected on his original goal, to attain an unattainable power. Had he succeeded, confronting the first disaster would have been easier. Diane envisioned a jar filled with blue liquid. He believed, however, that it was guarded by a protector. In his imagination, he envisioned a magical creature with blue eyes and enormous metal arms. He recalled attempting to pinpoint its exact location, but ultimately struck a deal with the snowman. He envisioned coins cascading in large quantities and realized he needed to address the situation. Then, he imagined himself lounging in a hammock by the lake, contemplating the possibility of becoming wealthy by transforming that lake into a snowflake-themed amusement park. Meanwhile, the long-haired fairy warned Dan about a trap ahead and advised him to avoid stepping on it. He jumped over the trap and assured her that he would be careful. As he glanced at the fairy, he realized he would have faced a much tougher challenge if he had been alone. The fairy beamed and exclaimed that they were nearly there. Dayan continued walking on the stone floor, accompanied by the fairies. Suddenly, one of them asked him to stop and suggested they greet a friend. Another fairy chimed in, noting that he was the one who had allowed them to live there. With a concerned expression, Dayan asked if someone was really there. He quickly followed up, pleading with them not to say it was a small, tough, white-bodied rascal. About half his size, the long-haired fairy confirmed that it was true and asked if Diane knew him. She waved her arms and exclaimed that he was strong, which had prevented the octopus from reaching them. Diane deduced they were talking about the guardian. He then decided that the fairies could go say goodbye to him, as he would wait for them there. However, the fairies paused and informed him that they had already arrived. Before Diane, a small creature with enormous arms appeared. He silently cursed the situation in his mind. The Guardian, using an electronic voice, announced that an intruder had been detected and that the passage was now closed. Immediately, the gate behind Diane shut on its own. He cursed once more, realizing that his escape route was now blocked. The Guardian began to transform, growing into a much taller creature with sharp claws. Intruder analysis was complete, confirming the need for destruction. The machine declared its findings. Dayan, now wearing a serious expression, asked the fairies if this friend of theirs was truly trustworthy. He noted that the Guardian had classified him as a target for elimination. The long-haired fairy then questioned whether the Guardian's appearance had changed. The creature lunged at Dayan, declaring that it would commence his destruction. Dayan remained unfazed, stating that this wasn't so bad either. Suddenly, metallic armor materialized on his left arm. With newfound confidence, he declared that he was ready to test his abilities. The Guardian struck with its sharp claws. Dayan successfully blocked the blow, but the force of the impact pushed him back. He clenched his left fist, realizing there was nothing he could do about the weight difference. In the end, it wasn't too bad. The Guardian examined its destroyed hand and coldly announced that the intruder's threat level had been reassessed. Weapons were unlocked, and Dayan quickly moved from his position, confirming that he had been fully identified as a target. He struck the Guardian once more and demanded if it truly believed you would just stand there and wait. A crackling energy began to form near the Guardian's head. It then stated that self-repair had been activated. Dayan realized that the Guardian was likely a robot with the capability to heal itself. The Guardian launched another attack, but Dayan skillfully dodged it. He believed he had a problem. He hadn't applied enough strength to his glove. The Guardian kept attacking, but Dayan continued to evade, deciding that it might be best to retreat for the time being. He gazed at the wall, contemplating whether to break through it to escape. At that moment, the long-haired fairy positioned herself between the two combatants. Her expression filled with anger and addressed the Guardian known as Snowblind. To stop the fighting, she pointed at Dayan and declared that he was their friend. Dayan looked at the fairy with a worried expression, concerned that she was being foolish. The Guardian, observing through a camera, noted the smiling fairy and declared that it was not a target for destruction, as it could not be destroyed. Dayan asked the Guardian where it was looking, and then struck it with a powerful punch. The long-haired fairy clutched her head and screamed, demanding to know why Dayan had attacked Snowblind. With a mischievous smile, Dayan replied that they would discuss it later. The fairy, now alarmed, exclaimed that everyone was friends. 3 fairies wept beside the fallen Guardian, pleading with it not to succumb to death. The curly-haired fairy shouted at Dayan, insisting he was their friend, while a square-haired fairy accused him of killing Snowblind. Dayan seized his wrist with his right hand and replied that the Guardian had attacked first, questioning whether they would prefer he had died instead. He sat down, called for Golem's Guardian, and asked if he had now proven his qualifications. The Guardian replied that the test was over, and the mission was complete. Dayan retrieved a key from a compartment that had opened in the Guardian's torso, believing that now he just needed to locate the vault. The long-haired fairy cried out Snowblind's name, while the curly-haired fairy waved her arms, signaling to Dad that he was no longer their friend. The long-haired fairy shouted, insisting that friends don't kill friends. With a skeptical expression, Dayan replied that he wasn't the one responsible for this, adding that Snowblind could be brought back to life. The curly-haired fairy, now smiling, asked what he meant. The long-haired fairy saw a green light when she touched Dayan's palm with her tail and exclaimed that he was telling the truth. Dayan sighed, thinking that they were quite a headache. But they were naive. He reflected that, with modern technology, it wouldn't be possible to recreate Golem in that way. However, Shin, the young man specializing in manufacturing, had the ability to reset. A light shone from the key in Dayan's hand. He stated that something more important was about to happen. Approaching the gate, he exclaimed that it was incredible. The long-haired fairy mentioned that this place had been opened for the first time and asked Dayan what he was looking for. He glanced around and replied that he was searching for something very important. Upon seeing a jar filled with blue liquid, he exclaimed, "This is it!" Suddenly, a window appeared, displaying a description of the elixir of life. The text described it as a golden beverage. Dayan informed the fairy that there wasn't much remaining, but he would provide her with more once he felt satisfied. The long-haired fairy drank from the jar, and as she did, she began to glow intensely and let out a piercing scream. Dayan covered his face with his hand, pondering whether it truly had a different effect on water fairies. The long-haired fairy smiled and exclaimed that her body felt lighter. With a worried expression, Dayan responded that it was fine and they would handle it later. He added that he didn't need anything else there and that it was time to leave. He then asked the fairies to take Golem with them, and they agreed. The afternoon sun shone brightly above as Dayan emerged from the water alongside the fairies. One of the fairies informed Dayan that they had arrived. Dayan looked up with a nervous expression and asked if she had been sleepwalking. He saw Lily conjuring a massive amount of flames and asked if she was playing with fire again. The girl spread her arms, a serious expression on her face, and called out to Dayan, "Uncle," when she noticed him. Diane shouted for her to extinguish the fire and come down immediately, then questioned whether she truly wanted to destroy the lake. In response, the flames surrounding her vanished. Sean, standing on the shore, shouted to Diane, asking where he had been. Diane, his face filled with alarm, realized that if he had taken any longer, there would have been serious consequences. He swam to the surface and explained that the situation had been an emergency. Sean Sang told Diane he was relieved to have returned safely and to have stopped Lily. Otherwise, she would have dried up the lake. Uni ran to her father, asking if he had found the commander. Gal hurried after her and approached Diane. The head turned toward them and ordered them to stop the search. Yunifei hugged Diane and asked where he had been, concerned that he might have been mistreated. Khan Song widened his eyes and told Diane that there were monsters behind him. Diane grabbed Yuni by the forearm and urged them both to calm down, assuring them that these were friends. He promised to explain everything in detail later. Lily had bumped Diane's chest and shouted, demanding to know where he had been. She punched him several times, shouting that it was already dinner time and he was nowhere to be found. With an angry expression, she shouted that she had to skip dinner to search for him, calling him a fool. Diane looked at the girl with a small smile, surrounded by his team members, and gently patted Lily's head. Dan felt the need to apologize for being late. He thought the vacation had gone by quickly and that everyone had already returned to their daily routines. Goho, noticing the approaching monsters, shouted that only their guild was present and urged everyone else to evacuate quickly. A humanoid monster with sharp teeth and a horn let out a deafening roar. Dayan, maintaining a calm expression, instructed Goho to take action, and Goho accepted the order, though a worried look crossed his face. Two monsters lunged at Goho, but their attacks failed to harm him thanks to his petrification ability. Diane reflected on his daily routine, which involved consuming 5 mana-rich meals and training diligently. He noted that when the request to eliminate the monsters arose, Goho was the first to take action. He observed how Tong withstood the blows and believed that his growth rate surpassed expectations. With a bit of luck, he would play a significant role during the first disaster. Diane then asked Lily if she was ready and informed her that she had 1 minute. The girl nodded and conjured 2 beams of fire above her palms. She shouted at her enemies that she would turn them into French fries. Then he launched several fireballs forward. Lily turned to Diane and said that everything was ready, then asked him to buy her a monster burger meal. Diane checked his watch and informed her that she was 5 seconds late, prompting him to interrupt with something. With a desperate expression, Lily fell to her knees and exclaimed that this couldn't be happening. Goho, with dark green energy radiating behind him, cheerfully asked Diane if he could join him for dinner today. Dayan rushed to the tank, placed his hand on Goho's shoulder, and swiftly attacked a monster lurking behind him with a dagger. He identified it as a shadow goblin, poised in the darkness, ready to strike. A drop of sweat trickled down Goho's cheek. Diane, wearing a stern expression, inquired about the type of dinner being discussed and emphasized that he needed to be prepared. Goho apologized to Diane with a sad expression and added that he would eat something nutritious today. Diane adjusted his stride and, glancing to the side, noted that this guy had a positive attitude. He encouraged him to maintain that same spirit. He drew a dagger enveloped in blue energy, believing that his abilities had attained the same level they had in his previous life. Turning his head, he reflected on how shadow goblins were no longer a problem for him, and noted that his mana reserves had increased as well. He realized that if he maintained this momentum, he would grow even stronger. A rainbow emerged against the backdrop of a cloudy sky. Lily gazed at the rainbow and noticed it was missing the color red. Diane pondered whether it would vanish in 2 weeks. Dayan believed that to survive the night of the 7 moons, he needed to make several preparations. He envisioned warriors charging toward numerous monsters and realized he would require firepower to eliminate them swiftly as they emerged from the gate. Additionally, he considered the need for a special command to destroy the gate's core. Dayan envisioned countless documents scattering to the ground and realized he needed a strategy to reduce the city's devastation. He envisioned a liquid pouring from a jar into his hand and realized that restoring superhumans' physical strength and healing their wounds was equally essential. He mentioned that he had already handled that part, and all that was left was to prepare for everything else. Yumi asked Diane if she could report on the status of potion sales. As she walked alongside Diane and Lily, she mentioned that she had been informed sales would begin this week. Diane, holding a document, instructed Yumi to continue monitoring the sales and emphasized that any issues should be reported to him immediately. With a stern expression, Diane asked the girl if the sale conditions had been approved. Yumi smiled and replied that it no longer mattered, as even without her advertisement, superhumans would line up for it. She added that she had included the prices for each portion in the report. Dayan noted that the portion size per person was fixed, and the price was steep. Yumi turned slightly and asked Diane if she had succeeded in pleasing him. Diane then inquired about young Shin's progress, mentioning that he had heard the golem was already capable of movement. She remembered a boy with a screwdriver in hand who prepared the guardian, claiming that no one else could do it, but he insisted that he could. Dayan approached his car, where the driver had opened the door for him. He told the girl that she needed to trust him, adding that was all there was to it. A crack appeared in the white void. Mentally, Dayan pondered why he was so certain he would succeed. He answered himself, believing it was all for the chance to go to the zoo with Lily. A malicious smirk crossed his face as he recalled young Shin blushing. He looked at the document listing the names Yi Sik, Son Jun, and Li Yong, realizing it contained the names of his friends who had attended his retirement party. Dayan believed that his intervention had altered the future, leaving no guarantee that they would meet again. He folded the document and tucked it under his shirt, declaring that he would keep it for himself. Yi smiled and asked Diane if he needed anything else. She then mentioned that she would like to work with him a bit more before taking a week off. Diane asked the driver how long it would take to reach the workplace. The driver replied that it would take approximately an hour. Dayan remarked that it was quite a distance and challenging for him. The driver, with his eyes closed, replied that it was fine. Diane then asked the driver if he would be interested in moving into an apartment next to the guild headquarters. The driver, alarmed by Diane's words, instructed Yunyi to prepare the driver's apartment as quickly as possible. He added that even if there were enough rooms for the driver's entire family, he would cover the costs. Yunyi closed her eyes and responded that she understood everything. She turned her head slightly and thought that Diane was quite a strange person. The driver glanced at Diane through the rearview mirror and asked what he was saying. Diane, smiling, replied that it would be more convenient for him. He added that he had plenty of money, so the driver shouldn't hesitate to accept. The driver laughed, then questioned whether he was dreaming or if it was his birthday. Dayan turned his head toward the window, contemplating that with potions, money was no longer a concern, but it was impossible to evacuate all his loved ones in that manner. With a serious expression, he realized that he still had a great deal of work ahead of him. Benjay smiled as he wished Diane and Lily a safe trip. Diane asked him to take care of the house while she was away. Lily informed Moonjae that he wouldn't be able to escape. The black-haired guy smiled in agreement with her. Lily gazed in a direction, her expression filled with surprise. Goho stood in front of a rock with a large dent in it. Diane placed his index finger to his lips and told the girl to stay quiet. He suggested they move on, as Goho was focused, and the girl replied that this was a good idea. Tank placed his hands on the rock and admitted he was too slow, which was not a good sign. With a frustrated expression, he stated that if he didn't get stronger, the commander would kick him out. Dayan, wearing a concerned expression, pondered whether Goho was still anxious about being expelled. He noted that regardless of Goho's motivation, it was a positive development that he was growing stronger, ensuring he wouldn't interfere. Lily announced that they would fly further and that she would create a shield. Dayan and the girls soared through the air on the shield. Yuni asked Lily if she could do this. Surprised, the girl told Diane that she had only tried it, and it had worked. Then, she asked if he really couldn't do the same. Diane cursed Lily in his mind. He gazed at the CR etched into the stone wall, considering it his personal treasure. He also mentioned that he had gathered various items he discovered in the Forbidden Territory. A cheerful fairy with a bob haircut greeted Lily, who responded by gently touching her with a finger and returning the greeting. A long-haired fairy greeted Diane and reported that there was nothing to report. Nothing had happened. With a serious expression, Diane replied that this was good and then ordered her to patrol near the cave. 3 fairies winked at Dan, ready to protect their friend's property. Diane believed they had consumed the elixir of life, granting them speed like bullets. He mentioned that he had harnessed their powers so they could reach him swiftly in the event of an invasion. The room was filled with boxes and shelves stacked with various items. Lily asked Diane why they were there, and Diane instructed her to wait. Diane envisioned a mask adorned with a woman's lips, believing that the charlatan's mask could make a person both attractive and charming, while also transforming their voice to resonate like that of an orator. He pictured a green cloak, imagining it as a sage's garment that radiated a challenging aura when infused with mana. He envisioned a staff topped with a blue stone, believing it would glow when infused with mana. Dayan's hair turned brown from wearing the green cloak, which he claimed looked very plausible. Lily then put on the mask, followed by a purple hood and cape, causing her hair to turn golden. She exclaimed that her voice had changed and sounded strange. Dayan declared that the preparations were complete and the operation could begin. The full moon hung in the middle of the night sky. People battled against monsters that emerged from the portal. Dayan emerged from the portal in pursuit of the monsters. He activated the Reveal Invisibility ability, making both himself and Lily visible. One of the warriors shouted, asking who they were. Another warrior yelled, questioning if he had just emerged from the gate. In front of Dayan, a group of fighters stood ready, weapons drawn and a staff held firmly in hand. Dayan smiled slightly, thinking it was beneficial to have many witnesses. He removed his hood and announced to the crowd before him that he was Amos, the mage from the continent of Guy. With a crazed look in his eyes, he declared that he had come to warn them of an impending disaster that would soon befall their lands. A rainbow appeared in the sky. Another fighter inquired about the language Dayan was speaking, noting that he had never heard it before. The two men exchanged concerned glances, and one of them asked the other if they had both come out of the gate. The stone on Dayan's staff began to glow intensely with a blue light. A man dressed in red and black obscured his face, while another man, armed with a shield, inquired about the source of the light. Dayan, wearing a serious expression, assured the people before him not to worry, as he would use translation magic. He requested permission to introduce himself once more, and declared that he was Amos the mage from the continent of Guy. He looked at Lily and instructed her to listen carefully. Taking it as a cue, the girl activated her shield ability. Dayan and Lily ascended into the air on the shield, and Dayan extended his hand, gripping the staff as he shouted to the crowd below that he had come to deliver a warning. The blonde-haired young man commented that Dayan was indeed a true mage. The long-haired man then inquired about the nature of Dayan's warning. A rainbow appeared in the sky, and Dayan declared it a sign of a curse. He extended his left hand and declared that when everyone vanished, a disaster would befall their lands, opening thousands of gates to hell. Lily understood that this was yet another sign. Portals opened above them, and Dayan shouted that monsters and demons would invade both earth and heaven. He warned that the living would close their eyes while the dead would rise. He urged the people to unite and prepare for the impending disaster. A wide-eyed officer inquired how they were expected to interpret this warning. Dayan believed he had successfully diverted their attention as he and Lily touched down on the ground. One of the guild members remarked on how odd it was that the colors in the rainbow were fading away. Dayan felt that the special mask enhanced his voice, while the sage's cloak radiated an aura that captivated those around him. He also mentioned that the staff merely emitted light, contributing to a powerful impression. The officer extended his right hand and asked Da how they could prevent this disaster. Dayan closed his eyes and looked down before replying that there was no way to prevent it, only to minimize the damage. He opened his eyes and asked the people in front of him who the king of the world was, promising to share all the details once he received an answer. In the interrogation room of the Blue House, a man wearing glasses opened the door and stepped inside, where Lily and Dayan were seated at a table. The man with glasses placed a magazine on the table and remarked that he had never met anyone like the head of the superhuman support team at Sunday. Dayan, wearing a confident expression, informed the chief that he understood his surprise, but he had come solely to warn him of the impending danger. He assumed the man was not the king and requested to be taken to the king immediately. Sanwai, wearing a serious expression, asked Da why he was so certain that he was not the king. He suggested that perhaps their cultures were different, which might explain why he did not resemble the king of their world. Dayan gestured with his palm and asked Sanwai if his words were hard to believe. He added that he could read destinies, though not very skillfully. Meanwhile, the man with glasses placed a hand on his head, deep in thought. Dayan asked his interlocutor if he truly had no idea how events would unfold, noting that he could see a glimpse of their impact on history and the destinies of great individuals. A blue energy radiated from Dayan as he told Santa that, although he was not a king at present, he would soon strive to become one. Sanwell, wearing a worried expression, shouted and demanded to know how Dayan had found out. Dayan believed he had glimpsed his future candidacy for the presidency and saw himself as a judge of superhumans, one who would not tolerate any crimes they committed. A shadow fell across his face as he remarked that he could not reveal more, for that was all he could foresee. A black-haired man in a white shirt opened the door and informed Sanwat that the president had requested a personal meeting with the mage. The chief turned to him and replied that he understood everything. Sanwat informed Amos that he would accompany him to the king. Dayan agreed and, with a smile on his face, extended his staff, which was then taken from his hands. He believed that the current Blue House had been rebuilt a few years prior. He envisioned a gate radiating pink energy, imagining that the first gate had opened right on its roof, from which a monster had emerged. He envisioned a red dragon opening its mouth and unleashing flames, concluding that, in the end, the president and most of the parliament members present had perished. The election of a new president had only marginally eased the ensuing chaos. Dayan looked around and thought the Blue House now appeared solid, resembling a military building. Sanwa stopped and informed Dayan that they had arrived. In the president's office, numerous guards stood between them and the president, who was seated at his desk. The president, with gray hair and glasses, extended his hand to greet Dayan. He introduced himself as the president of the country and inquired if Dayan had indeed come from another dimension. Standing beside the president was a man wearing a gray mask. Don bowed and confirmed that he was Amos, a mage from the continent of Guy. He expressed his hope that the president would forgive his assistant's imperfect translation magic. Lily also bowed to the president and joyfully stated that she was happy to meet him. The president responded that it was fine for them to sit down. Dayan examined the chair more closely and noted that it was unusual. The president explained that it was a chair designed to detect lies, adding that if he were to lie, they would know immediately. Dayan, smiling, suggested to the president that it would be beneficial for him to sit in one of those himself. The president requested Dayan to repeat his words. Dayan replied that he was stating they had nothing to hide. Taking a seat, Dayan declared that he was ready to answer. The president asked the guests if he had truly come from the continent of Guy. Both Dayan and Lily responded with a yes. The president inquired of the guests whether their account of the disaster was accurate. Dayan, wearing a serious expression, affirmed its truth and explained that they had come to issue a warning. However, his assistant genuinely knew nothing about the situation. The president then requested that the guests share what they knew. Dayan started sharing the story, while Lily confessed that she knew nothing about it. She lowered her head, and Dayan realized that the little girl hadn't grasped even half of the questions. He then mentioned that he had trained in martial arts and could control his pulse and sweat, making him immune to the lie detector. The fighters questioned his true identity. The president stood up and instructed his subordinates to remove the devices from Dayan. Following his command, the sensors were taken off him. The president, accompanied by his subordinates, exits the room. Dayan lets out a sigh, while the trembling Lily raises her hands in the air. A man with glasses approaches Dayan and apologizes for doubting him, noting that the situation is now in their favor. Dayan replies that he understands completely, as he would have acted the same way. A shadow falls across the president's face as he turns to Dayan and says he has a personal question. He asks Dayan if he can assist him in flying to his continent before the disaster strikes. Dayan opens his eyes in surprise. The president, smiling, asks Dayan if it is safer there and notes that since Dayan came from that place to warn them, it is quite likely. Dayan, wearing a shocked expression, asks the president how he, as a king, could want to abandon his people and flee. The president, wearing an alarmed expression, shouts that he is not a king, explaining that his position was simply bestowed upon him. He adds that if they need money or anything else, they will have to ask. He moves one arm to the side and presses the other against his chest, shouting that he is tired of this dangerous world where you never know when you will die. All he asks is to be taken away with his family and friends. Dayan realizes he did not expect this. He takes Lily's hand and shouts to her that he has a different opinion about them, so they are leaving now. The president shouts at the departing guests, insisting that they had promised to help. Dayan replies to the gray-haired man, stating that he will never understand what lies within his soul. He adds that he needs nothing and firmly rejects the offer. The president states that this is not necessary, yet insists there is no other option. His bodyguard takes off his mask, revealing a gray-haired man with a mustache and beard, who then crushes the mask until it shatters. It is the first awakened Titan, Kim Suho. He approaches Dayan while his phantom clones stay behind. He towers over Dayan, surrounded by a massive surge of green energy. Dayan trembles, unable to meet his gaze. He laughs, and Suho asks him why. Dayan asks him how long he plans to keep playing this game and refers to him as the true king. Suho's face reflects concern as he asks Dayan how he discovered it. Dayan closes his eyes and responds that he noticed the enormous Fae star behind him. The first awakened Titan features a bright green star. Dayan believes that Suho was the hero who restored order to South Korea after the first gate opened. He envisions the South Korean flag waving against a cloudy sky and thinks that, upon awakening his powers, Suho mobilized the police force to protect the city's residents. Following the presidential elections, he rebuilt the Blue House and began governing the nation. Suho committed himself to revitalizing the city, and now all South Koreans are familiar with the headquarters of the Disaster Response Center. Suho extends his hand toward Dayan, who is with Lily, and addresses the gathered crowd, stating that before starting the meeting, he would like to introduce the mage who delivered the prophecy. Dan introduces himself as Amos and expresses his hope that everyone will listen to him attentively. He then reveals the truth about the rainbow, stating with a serious expression that this is the only dangerous aspect of the disaster. He believes that all the key authorities are present at the gathering. Shan Song clenches his fist and shouts that among these 10,000 monsters, there are likely to be some very powerful ones, including the monster Baek Shun. The Demon King Kim, among others, speaks as Eugene listens attentively to Diane's speech, his expression marked by suspicion. The girl with white hair and blue eyes is known as the Ice Queen, Hani Hai. The brown-haired man with matching eyes is known as the Iron Wall of Men, Mei Wen. Dan believes that these individuals are the first awakened beings, or more specifically, the 5 strongest among the initial awakenings. He adds that they helped eliminate the monsters and resolve the situation, just like Suho. With a discreet smile, Suho announces his plan to declare a state of emergency tomorrow morning and assures everyone that he will do his best to prepare for the impending disaster. He requests the assistance of everyone present. Eugene, wearing a serious expression, asks the president to wait and questions how he could believe in such an unbelievable story. He places his hand on his palm and closes his eyes, expressing his agreement, as another person comments that declaring a state of emergency without proof is a hasty decision. Someone then asks if there is any evidence. Suo raises his hand, asks for silence, and states that he has already verified everything. He recalls the opening of the first gate, marked by burning buildings, and expresses that if everything goes well, they can manage the situation without major issues, which would be a positive outcome. However, he warns that they will face significant losses if they do not prepare for the impending disaster. The one who had been silent now seems eager to discuss what he has been doing, but suddenly he stops. He quickly gets up and runs forward, assuming a combat stance and questioning whether this is an attack. You shout for him to take off the mask. He grabs Lily with one hand and, with the other, removes her mask, stating that it was bothering him. She should remain still while he removes it. The mask drops to the ground. Lily releases a cloud of smoke as she undergoes her transformation. One person looks at his hand while Shan Song makes a shocked expression. Furious, Lily transforms into a cat and lets out a loud meow. Someone at the table asks if she truly wasn't human. He picks up the mask from the ground, places it on the cat, and tells Lily to calm down, explaining that the man knew nothing and was mistaken. He angrily states that showing her face is a disgrace for the representative of the cats, which is why she always wears the mask when they travel together. With a cautious expression, he considers that if something like this were to happen, he had already coordinated his actions with Lily. He remembers how she, with her golden hair, looked at the mask with interest. She thought that in addition to changing the voice, there was a spell that transformed anyone who wore it into a cat. If the mask was removed, the spell would break. Mentally, Dad acknowledges he was wrong and contemplates his next steps. Meanwhile, Sumo, enveloped in a dark aura, demands that he apologize immediately. The golden cat in the daylight meows loudly as the brown-haired man apologizes for removing the mask without permission. Dean, with a nervous smile on his face, thinks that the girl has already perfectly adapted to the role of a cat, as she has meowed several times in a row. The next day, Sue declares a state of emergency through radio and television broadcasts. Standing behind the podium, he informs citizens about the crisis affecting South Korea. While there is some commotion following the announcement, everyone quickly adapts to the situation. Helicopters soar through the sky while tanks and armored vehicles traverse the ground. The military police and superhuman guilds initiate large-scale military training. A brown-haired man approaches Dan, calling him a great sage. He mentions that he heard Dan would be leaving that day. Dan, sitting at the table with Lily, responds that he indeed will be leaving, as the interdimensional movement spell is nearly over. He adds that he will need to return in a few hours. The man asks if he can request a small favor before his departure. Dan, smiling, replies that he will do everything within his power. The man then hands him some books acquired during the country's restoration. Dan gazes at the numerous shelves filled with books. A man explains that he has selected only those in good condition and encourages him to take a look at them. Since time is short, he suggests that Dad focus only on the most important matters. Dad gets up from his chair and admits that his knowledge is limited, so the man should not expect too much from him. He feels that the man views him more as a servant than as a great sage. The man thanks him, and as Dan walks him along the shelves, he reflects that, in addition to spoken languages, he is well-versed in the writings of the continent in the Myran language. He also considers that his knowledge is primarily focused on magic and martial arts. He focuses on a book titled Secret Records of the Sword Emperor. He opens it with surprise as he reads that the author, Nam Gong Yu, introduces himself as the Sword Emperor. He thinks to himself that this truly is the Myron language and wonders what will come next. The brown-haired man asks Dad if something is wrong with the book. Dad closes the book and thinks to himself that he is not sure. If it is the original, he needs to examine it more carefully. With a strange expression, Diane remarks that the book seems to have been written by the devil himself. The brown-haired man asks if that is true. Diane asks if there were any other objects at the location where the book was found. She suggests it could be a sword or something similar, adding that it contains demonic energy which controls whoever holds it and causes harm to those nearby. The interlocutor turns on his smartphone and exclaims that he will check immediately. Diane believes it would be ideal to find the celestial divine sword once wielded by the Sword Emperor. The brown-haired man informs Dad that no sword was discovered. Only worn clothes and a book were found in the destroyed cave. Dad closes his eyes and smiles, expressing happiness at the news, but internally curses the man. Diane places the book under his cloak and warns that it is very dangerous. He decides to take it with him and seal it. He adds that their king is very busy and advises the interlocutor not to report anything. The interlocutor responds that he will do so. Diane begins reading the lines of a book in which the author reveals he was born as an illegitimate son. The author explains that although heaven granted him a talent for martial arts, he faced constant discrimination due to his origins. He notes that he could not even witness the development of martial arts within the noble Bone family. After his mother's death, he stole all the family's martial arts records and elixirs. As he reads the book with a concentrated expression, he thinks that the introduction is uninteresting to him, and the final part contains information he already knows. He adds that the Sword Emperor, who became a high-class master, fought against the celestial demon and, after a narrow victory, disappeared. Lily asked her dad what he was doing and mentioned that she was bored. Diane suggested that she play alone for a while, adding that if she was truly bored, she might as well read. Irritated, Lily runs away from Dad and shouts to the girl that if she's going for a walk, she should be back in time for dinner. He believes he can finally find some peace in silence and solitude. Diane reads that, due to an invasion by a demonic cult, a great war with the celestial demon erupted in the Central Plains. It also states that the Sword Emperor had no choice but to intervene to stop him. The difference between them was slight, almost imperceptible. Had he been born a legitimate son of the Nambang family, he would have mastered perfect martial arts a bit earlier. Only after many years of atrocities committed by the celestial demon did he return to the Central Lands. If he had come back missing an arm or a leg, he would have been labeled a loser and ridiculed. With a worried expression, Diane thinks that this man is saying far too much. With dissatisfaction on his face, he asks why there is so much written about the heaven-destroying mental technique. Diane flips through the pages and reads as the book's author addresses the reader, asking if they want to learn the world's greatest martial arts. It is stated that if the answer is yes, the reader should bow. The author claims that he considers them his disciple after this. It is also noted that the author ultimately defeated the celestial demon using the so-called heaven-destroying mental technique. Diane sits on the floor and places the book down. Then he says he will try once. Sitting in a butterfly position, he forms an orange ball between his hands, surrounded by a blue energy filled with sparks that circle around it. Diane closes his eyes and reflects on the three main levels of meditation. A stream of smoke drifts to the right. Diane reflects on accumulation, specifically the amount of internal energy stored within the Danan. A stream of smoke drifts to the left as Diane contemplates stability, specifically the stability of energy within the body. Suddenly, he hears a noise and turns to see what it is. He opens the window and gazes up at a portal in the sky. He shouts that he sees a portal. Monsters will emerge from it, and he sees a minotaur stepping through the portal. Hey everyone, did you enjoy this story? I really liked it. To keep up with the next part, be sure to subscribe to the channel and give us a like.